Thomas Reed's heart races as he steps into the grand reception hall on the Talaxian homeworld. The human diplomat's mission to secure rare minerals for Earth weighs heavily on his shoulders. He straightens his back, preparing to greet the alien officials, when a stunningly beautiful Talaxian female throws herself at his feet. "Honored human guest," she cries out, her melodious voice echoing through the cavernous chamber. "I am Petra, and I beg to serve as your personal cook and pleasure companion during your stay." Thomas freezes, his mouth agape. The human delegation behind him erupts in shocked whispers. He glances at the Talaxian officials, expecting similar surprise, but their expressions remain impassive. I don't understand," Thomas stammers, his face flushing red. High Counselor Zack steps forward, his ornate robe shimmering in the soft light. "This is a sacred Talaxian custom, Ambassador Reed. Petra has been chosen to attend to your needs during these crucial negotiations." Thomas's mind races. Earth's strict diplomatic protocols explicitly forbid such arrangements. He opens his mouth to refuse, but Zax's eyes narrow dangerously. To reject this offer would be a grave insult to our people, the High Counselor warns, his tone icy. It could jeopardize our entire negotiation. The human delegation erupts into heated debate behind Thomas. Ambassador Chen argues forcefully, "We can't risk the mineral rights over this. Think of what those resources could mean for Earth's future." "But the ethical implications," Dr. Patel interjects, her voice strained. "If the media back home gets wind of this." Thomas feels the weight of worlds on his shoulders. He looks down at Petra, still prostrated before him. Her large, violet eyes brim with unshed tears. "Please," she whispers, her voice trembling. "If you refuse me, my social standing will be ruined. I'll have no future among my people." The gravity of the situation hits Thomas like a physical blow. His decision will impact not only interstellar relations and humanity's resource acquisition efforts, but also this young alien's entire life. As tensions in the room rise to a fever pitch, Thomas realizes he must make a choice. He must find a way to balance cultural sensitivity, diplomatic necessity, and his own moral compass. The fate of two worlds hangs in the balance, and every eye in the room, human and Talaxian alike, is fixed upon him, waiting to see how he'll respond to this unexpected cultural minefield. Thomas took a deep breath, his mind racing as he weighed the consequences of his decision. The silence in the grand reception hall was deafening, broken only by the soft rustle of fabric as the assembled diplomats shifted uncomfortably. "Petra," Thomas said softly, extending his hand to the prostrate Talaxian, "please stand up." As Petra rose to her feet, her violet eyes wide with anticipation, Thomas turned to address High Counselor Zax. "High Counselor, I am deeply honored by this gesture of hospitality," Thomas began, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "In the spirit of fostering understanding between our peoples, I accept Petra's offer to serve as my personal cook and companion during these negotiations." A collective sigh of relief rippled through the Talaxian officials. High Counselor Zax's stern expression softened, the corners of his mouth turning up in a slight smile. "You have chosen wisely, Ambassador Reed," Zax intoned, his voice rich with approval. "May this be the first of many positive exchanges between our worlds." Behind Thomas, the human delegation erupted into hushed debate. Ambassador Chen nodded approvingly, while Dr. Patel's brow furrowed with concern. Thomas held up a hand to quiet them, then addressed his team. "I understand your reservations," he said in a low voice, "but we must respect Talaxian customs if we hope to succeed in our mission. I give you my word that I will handle the situation with the utmost diplomacy and discretion." With the tension in the room dissipating, Petra stepped forward, her face beaming with joy. "Thank you, honored Thomas," she said, her melodious voice filled with gratitude. "I shall prepare a traditional welcome feast to celebrate this auspicious beginning." As Petra bustled off to begin her preparations, Thomas found himself swept into a whirlwind of activity. The next few hours passed in a blur of introductions and preliminary discussions with Talaxian officials. By the time evening fell, Thomas's head was spinning with new information and cultural nuances. The welcome feast proved to be a turning point. Seated at a long, ornately carved table in a private dining chamber, Thomas and his team marveled at the array of exotic dishes Petra had prepared. As she served each course, Petra explained the significance of the ingredients and the cultural importance of each recipe. "This golden bread," Petra said, placing a steaming loaf on the table, "is made from grains harvested during the Festival of New Moons. It symbolizes prosperity and new beginnings." Thomas took a bite, savoring the complex flavors. "It's delicious," he said, genuinely impressed. "And the symbolism is certainly fitting for our negotiations." As the meal progressed, Thomas found himself increasingly drawn into conversation with Petra. Her knowledge of Talaxian culture and history was vast, and she possessed a quick wit that kept him on his toes. Over the next few days, Petra proved invaluable to the negotiations. She briefed Thomas on the intricate web of Talaxian politics, explaining the hidden meanings behind certain gestures and phrases. Armed with this knowledge, Thomas navigated the talks with newfound confidence. One evening, as they prepared for the next day's session, Petra's expression grew serious. "Thomas," she said, her voice low, "I've heard whispers among the serving staff. The Zorgans have arrived on our world." Thomas's eyes widened. "The Zorgans? What do you know about them?" Petra's violet eyes flashed with concern. "They are known for their aggressive trading tactics. I fear they may seek to disrupt your negotiations for the mineral rights." Thomas nodded, his mind already racing with potential strategies. "Thank you, Petra. This information could be crucial." The following day, as Thomas entered the negotiation chamber, he was met with the sight of 3 imposing Zorgan delegates. Their scaled skin shimmered in the light, and their sharp teeth glinted as they smiled coldly at the human delegation. High Counselor Zax made the introductions, his voice carefully neutral. "Ambassador Reed, may I present Trade Minister Cross of the Zorgan Confederation. They too seek to discuss mineral rights on our world." Thomas inclined his head respectfully, recalling Petra's advice on Talaxian etiquette. "Minister Cross, it is an honor to meet you. I look forward to engaging in productive discussions that benefit all parties involved." As the negotiations began, Thomas quickly realized the value of Petra's intelligence. The Zorgans employed subtle pressure tactics, attempting to manipulate the Talaxians' cultural values to their advantage. Thanks to Petra's insights, Thomas was able to counter these moves, presenting Earth's proposals in ways that resonated deeply with the Talaxian High Council. During a recess, Thomas found a moment alone with Petra. "Your help has been invaluable," he said softly, acutely aware of the growing warmth he felt in her presence. "I don't know how I would have navigated this without you." Petra's cheeks flushed a deeper shade of blue. "I am honored to assist you, Thomas," she replied, her eyes meeting his. "Your respect for our ways, your kindness. It means more than I can express." As Thomas prepared to return to the negotiation chamber, Petra pressed a small object into his hand. "A traditional good luck charm," she explained, her fingers lingering against his palm. "May it bring you wisdom and strength." Thomas felt a jolt of electricity at her touch, his heart racing as he closed his fingers around the charm. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the crucial discussions ahead. The weight of his mission, the complexities of interspecies diplomacy, and his growing feelings for Petra all swirled in his mind as he stepped back into the chamber, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Thomas clutched the good luck charm Petra had given him, drawing strength from its smooth surface as he entered the negotiation chamber. The air crackled with tension as he took his seat across from the Zorgan delegation, their scaled skin glinting under the harsh lights. High Counselor Zax called the meeting to order, his voice resonating through the room. "We are gathered here to discuss the allocation of mineral rights on Talaxian soil. Let us proceed with respect and open minds." Minister Cross, the Zorgan representative, wasted no time in asserting his position. The Zorgan Confederation demands exclusive mining rights to the rare earth deposits in the southern continent, he declared, his sharp teeth flashing as he spoke. "We have the technology and resources to extract these minerals efficiently." Thomas leaned forward, his mind racing with the insights Petra had shared. He recognized the aggressive posturing for what it was, a typical Zorgan negotiation tactic. "Minister Cross, High Counselor Zax," he began, his voice steady, "I propose we consider a collaborative approach. Earth's expertise in sustainable mining practices, combined with Zorgan efficiency and Talaxian wisdom, could yield benefits for all parties involved." As Thomas elaborated on his proposal, he noticed a shift in the room. The Talaxians nodded approvingly, while the Zorgans exchanged intrigued glances. He was making headway, carefully navigating the cultural nuances Petra had warned him about. Suddenly, the chamber shook violently. Chandeliers swayed dangerously, and cracks spider-webbed across the walls. The earthquake struck without warning, plunging the negotiations into chaos. "Everyone out!" Thomas shouted, helping a stunned Talaxian official to his feet. As they stumbled into the streets, the full extent of the devastation became clear. Buildings had collapsed, and panic cries filled the air. Without hesitation, Thomas tapped his comm device. "This is Ambassador Reed. I need immediate assistance from the Earth delegation. Bring all available search and rescue equipment." As he coordinated with his team, Thomas spotted Petra rushing towards him, her face etched with worry. "Thomas, are you all right?" "I'm fine," he assured her, grasping her hand briefly. "We need to help the injured. Can you guide us to the most affected areas?" Petra nodded, her expression resolute. "Follow me." For hours, Thomas and Petra worked side by side, using Earth's advanced technology to locate survivors trapped in the rubble. The Talaxians watched in awe as human rescue drones navigated through collapsed structures, pinpointing life signs with remarkable accuracy. As they approached a particularly unstable building, Petra's keen hearing picked up a faint cry. "There's someone inside!" she exclaimed, pointing to a precariously balanced section of wall. Thomas didn't hesitate. He activated his protective field and rushed in, Petra close behind. They found a young Talaxian child huddled beneath a fallen beam. As Thomas carefully lifted the debris, the building groaned ominously. "It's coming down!" Petra cried. In a split second, Thomas made his decision. He thrust the child into Petra's arms and shoved him towards the exit. As the ceiling began to collapse, he threw himself over Petra, shielding her and the child with his body. Debris rained down around them, but Thomas's protective field held. When the dust settled, they emerged unscathed, the child clinging tightly to Petra. The crowd that had gathered erupted in cheers. Among them, Thomas spotted High Counselor Zax and Minister Cross, their expressions a mix of awe and respect. As the immediate danger passed, the Talaxian High Council called for an emergency session. Thomas, exhausted but determined, prepared to rejoin the negotiations. "You've shown great courage and compassion," Petra said softly as she helped him clean up. "My people will not forget this." Thomas smiled tiredly. It was the right thing to do. "Now, we need to find a way to turn this tragedy into an opportunity for lasting cooperation." Entering the hastily prepared meeting room, Thomas was struck by the changed atmosphere. Gone was the earlier hostility. Instead, both Talaxians and Zorgans regarded him with newfound respect. High Counselor Zax spoke first. "Ambassador Reed, your actions today have demonstrated the true spirit of cooperation we seek in our galactic neighbors. We are prepared to revisit our stance on the Mineral Rights Agreement." Minister Cross nodded, his earlier aggression tempered. The Zorgan Confederation is impressed by Earth's technological capabilities and your leadership, Ambassador. Perhaps there is merit in exploring a more collaborative approach. Seizing the moment, Thomas laid out his vision. What if we established a three-way agreement? Shared access to the mineral deposits, coupled with a framework for mutual aid and technological exchange. Today's events have shown how much we can achieve when we work together. As discussions progressed late into the night, Thomas found himself navigating increasingly complex waters. He noticed the subtle changes in how the Talaxians deferred to Petra, her status clearly elevated by her association with him. The Zorgans, too, began expressing interest in cultural exchange programs with Earth, adding new layers to the negotiations. Exhausted but exhilarated by the progress, Thomas finally retired to his quarters. He found Petra waiting, a bowl of fragrant Talaxian herbs in her hands. A traditional healing treatment, she explained, her violet eyes meeting his. You've earned some rest, Thomas. As Petra began to apply the soothing mixture to his temples, Thomas felt the tension of the day begin to melt away. Yet, as her fingers gently worked their magic, he became acutely aware of the growing attraction between them. Thomas closed his eyes, his mind whirling with the implications of their deepening bond. He knew that his actions towards Petra weren't just a matter of personal feelings. They could have far-reaching consequences for the delicate diplomatic balance he was trying to maintain. As he drifted off to sleep, the weight of his responsibilities mingled with his growing affection for Petra. Thomas knew that the coming days would test not only his diplomatic skills but also his heart, as he navigated the treacherous waters of interstellar politics and unexpected love. Romance as he drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Thomas awoke to the rich aroma of unfamiliar spices wafting through his quarters. He blinked away the remnants of sleep and found Petra bustling about, preparing what appeared to be a traditional Talaxian breakfast. "Good morning, Thomas," she said, her violet eyes twinkling. "I thought you might appreciate a taste of Talaxian cuisine to start your day." Thomas sat up, acutely aware of the delicate balance he needed to maintain between his growing personal feelings and his diplomatic responsibilities. "Thank you, Petra. It smells wonderful." As they sat down to eat, Thomas marveled at the array of colorful dishes before him. He was about to take a bite of a vibrant blue fruit when his communication device chimed urgently. "Ambassador Reed here," he answered, his brow furrowing as he listened to the message. Petra watched his expression change from curiosity to concern. "I understand. I'll be there immediately," Thomas said, ending the call. He turned to Petra, his face grave. "We have a situation. A human mining company, Stellar Resources, Inc., has arrived in orbit without authorization. Their CEO is requesting an immediate meeting with the High Council and me." Petra's eyes widened. This could complicate the negotiations significantly. Thomas nodded, already rising from his seat. "We need to get to the council chambers right away. I may need your insights on how the Talaxians will perceive this development." They hurried through the winding streets of the Talaxian capital, the tension in the air palpable. As they approached the council chambers, they could hear Ray's voices echoing from within. The scene inside was one of chaos. Talaxian officials argued amongst themselves, while the Zorgan delegation stood off to one side, their scaled skin rippling with awe-inspiring anger. High Counselor Zack spotted Thomas and waved him over. "Ambassador Reed, perhaps you can explain why an unauthorized Earth vessel has entered our space?" Zax's tone was carefully controlled, but Thomas could sense the underlying fury. Before Thomas could respond, the doors burst open and a tall, imposing human strode in. He wore an expensive suit that seemed out of place among the alien delegates. Marcus Blackwell, CEO of Stellar Resources, Inc., the man announced, his voice booming through the chamber. "I apologize for the unorthodox arrival, but I believe I have a proposal that will interest all parties involved." Thomas stepped forward, his fist tight. "Mr. Blackwell, your presence here is unauthorized and could jeopardize delicate negotiations." Blackwell waved his hand dismissively. "Nonsense, Reed. I'm here to offer the Talaxians a better deal than your three-way agreement could ever provide." The chamber erupted into murmurs as Blackwell outlined his proposal. Stellar Resources had developed a new mining technology that could extract rare minerals with minimal environmental impact. He offered the Talaxians a higher percentage of profits than the current agreement in exchange for exclusive mining rights. Thomas watched as the Talaxian officials leaned in, clearly intrigued by the offer. The Zorgan delegation bristled, their forked tongues flicking in agitation. High Counselor Zax raised his hand for silence. "This is an unexpected development. We will need time to consider this new proposal. I call for a recess." As the delegates filed out, Thomas cornered Blackwell. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he hissed. "Months of careful diplomacy, and you waltz in here with no regard for interstellar protocol." Blackwell smirked. "Protocol doesn't drive profits, Reed. I'm here to make a deal, not play politics." Thomas noticed several Talaxian officials observing their exchange with interest. He forced himself to remain calm, acutely aware of the diplomatic implications of this confrontation. As Blackwell sauntered away, Petra approached Thomas, her expression thoughtful. "Thomas, I have an idea. What if we organize a showcase of Earth's technologies and cultural achievements? It could remind the Talaxians and Zorgans of the benefits of a broader alliance with Earth." Thomas's eyes lit up. "Petra, that's brilliant. We could include Stellar Resources mining equipment, but frame it within the context of Earth's overall technological and cultural contributions." They quickly set to work, mobilizing the human delegation to prepare the showcase. Thomas reached out to the Zorgan representatives, assuring them of Earth's commitment to the original agreement and inviting them to participate in the demonstration. As they worked side by side, Thomas found himself increasingly relying on Petra's insights and diplomatic skills. She was no longer just a cultural guide, but a true partner in navigating this complex political landscape. Late into the night, they finalized plans for the showcase. Thomas rubbed his tired eyes, acutely aware of Petra's presence beside him. The air between them seemed charged with unspoken emotions. "We should get some rest," Thomas said softly. "Tomorrow will be crucial." Petra nodded, her violet eyes meeting his. Indeed, the fate of the negotiations may well rest on this showcase. As they parted ways for the night, Thomas couldn't help but feel the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on him. The success of the showcase could determine not only the future of human-alien relations, but also the course of his own personal journey on this distant world. With one last look at Petra's retreating form, Thomas steeled himself for the challenges that lay ahead. The technology showcase loomed on the horizon, promising to be a pivotal moment in his diplomatic mission and perhaps in his own life as well. The technology showcase loomed on the horizon, promising to be a pivotal moment in his diplomatic mission and perhaps in his own life as well. As dawn broke over the Talaxian capital, Thomas found himself standing before the massive doors of the exhibition hall. The air hummed with anticipation and the faint whir of machinery as final preparations were underway. Petra appeared at his side, her violet eyes scanning the bustling activity around them. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice a mix of excitement and concern. Thomas nodded, squaring his shoulders. "As ready as I'll ever be. Let's make this count." They entered the hall together, immediately engulfed by the controlled chaos of last-minute adjustments. Earth's technological marvels stood proudly on display, from advanced medical equipment to sustainable energy solutions. At the center of it all, the Stellar Resources Inc. mining equipment gleamed under the bright lights, its sleek design a testament to human innovation. As the doors opened to admit the Talaxian and Zorgan delegations, Thomas took his place at the podium. He felt the weight of countless eyes upon him as he began his speech, his words carefully chosen to highlight the mutual benefits of a three-way partnership. Distinguished members of the Talaxian High Council, honored representatives of the Zorgan Confederation, Thomas began, his voice clear and strong. Today, we stand at the threshold of a new era of cooperation and shared prosperity. As he spoke, Petra moved quietly among the delegates, her melodious voice providing real-time translations. Thomas watched as understanding dawned on the faces of the alien dignitaries, their expressions shifting from polite interest to genuine engagement. The showcase proceeded smoothly, with officials moving from station to station. Thomas noticed High Counselor Zax lingering at a display of Earth's latest agricultural technologies, his eyes wide with fascination. Nearby, a group of Zorgan delegates examined a holographic representation of Earth's solar system, their forked tongues flicking in and out as they conversed in low hisses. Marcus Blackwell commanded attention at the Stellar Resources exhibit, his booming voice carrying across the hall as he extolled the virtues of his company's mining equipment. Minimal environmental impact, maximum efficiency, he proclaimed, activating a small-scale demonstration that drew gasps of awe from the gathered Talaxians. Thomas was just beginning to feel a sense of triumph when a commotion erupted near the entrance. A group of Talaxians burst into the hall, their faces painted with vibrant patterns that Thomas recognized as symbols of environmental activism. They carried banners with slogans in the Talaxian language, their voices rising in chants that needed no translation to convey their anger. Stop the destruction. Protect our world. The protesters' cries echoed through the hall, causing alarm among the delegates. Thomas's mind raced as he assessed the situation. He caught Petra's eye across the room and she nodded, understanding his unspoken request. As she approached the protesters, Thomas made his way to the center of the hall. "Please," he called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I invite the leader of this group to step forward and share your concerns. We are here to listen and to find solutions together." A tall Talaxian woman with intricate green markings on her face stepped forward. "I am Zira," she announced, her voice trembling with emotion. "We cannot stand by while our world is ravaged for profit. Your mining technologies may seem clean, but at what cost to our ecosystems?" Thomas nodded, acknowledging her words. "Zira, your passion for your world is admirable. It's a sentiment we share on Earth. Perhaps we can use this moment to discuss how we can ensure that any resource extraction is done with the utmost respect for Talaxian ecosystems." As Thomas engaged with Zira, he was acutely aware of the reactions around him. The Talaxian High Council members watched with interest, while the Zorgan delegation observed with what seemed like grudging respect. Marcus Blackwell, however, was visibly agitated, his face flushed as he tried to interject. "Now see here," Blackwell blustered, stepping forward. "We've invested millions in this technology. You can't just dash." "Mr. Blackwell," Thomas cut in smoothly, "perhaps you'd like to explain how Stellar Resources plans to monitor and mitigate any potential environmental impacts?" As Blackwell fumbled for a response, Thomas seized the opportunity to propose a solution. "What if we established a joint environmental monitoring committee? Representatives from Earth, Talaxis, and Zorgan could work together to ensure all mining operations adhere to the strictest ecological standards." The suggestion sent a ripple of murmurs through the crowd. High Counselor Zax nodded thoughtfully, while even the Zorgan delegates seemed to consider the idea with interest. As the day wore on, Thomas found himself at the center of a whirlwind of discussions. He moved from group to group, addressing concerns, offering solutions, and always keeping the focus on cooperation and mutual benefit. Petra was never far from his side, her insights proving invaluable as they navigated the complex web of Talaxian politics and cultural sensitivities. As the showcase drew to a close, Thomas felt a mix of exhaustion and cautious optimism. He had managed to turn a potential disaster into an opportunity, but the real test would come in the final negotiations. Petra approached him as the last of the delegates filed out of the hall. "You did well today," she said softly, her hand brushing his arm. "The council members were impressed by your handling of the protest." Thomas allowed himself a small smile. "We did well," he corrected her. "I couldn't have done this without you, Petra." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the air between them seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. But before either could speak, a Talaxian aide approached, informing them that the High Council was ready to reconvene for final negotiations. As they made their way to the council chambers, Thomas felt the weight of the moment. The events of the day had reshaped the playing field, opening new avenues for agreement. But he knew that the most challenging part of his mission still lay ahead. Entering the grand hall where the fate of interstellar relations would be decided, Thomas took a deep breath. The faces of the Talaxian High Council and the Zorgan delegation turned to him expectantly. With Petra at his side, he stepped forward, ready to secure a future of cooperation and shared prosperity for all three worlds. With a deep breath, Thomas stepped forward to address the assembled delegates. "Esteemed representatives," he began, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We stand at a crossroads of immense possibility. The events of yesterday have shown us that through open dialogue and mutual understanding, we can forge a path forward that benefits all our peoples." As Thomas spoke, he scanned the room, noting the attentive faces of the Talaxian High Council, the slightly restless postures of the Zorgan delegation, and the impatient tapping of Marcus Blackwell's fingers on the polished table. Petra stood nearby, her presence a source of quiet strength. High Counselor Zax nodded, his elongated features thoughtful. "We are prepared to hear Earth's final proposal. Ambassador Reed, please proceed." Thomas activated a holographic display, showcasing a detailed three-dimensional model of the proposed mining sites on Talaxis. As he outlined the comprehensive plan for a three-way partnership, the room filled with a low hum of murmurs and whispers. "Our proposal incorporates stellar resources' advanced mining technology," Thomas explained, zooming in on a miniature representation of the equipment. "But crucially, it also includes stringent environmental safeguards and a fair profit-sharing agreement that respects the interests of all parties involved." The Talaxian representatives leaned forward, their interest piqued. Even the Zorgan delegates, typically stoic, showed signs of engagement, their forked tongues flicking out more frequently. As Thomas delved into the specifics of environmental protections, Marcus Blackwell's patience wore thin. He surged to his feet, his face flushed with nearly unleashed frustration. "This is absurd," Blackwell exclaimed, his voice booming through the chamber. "We're sitting on a gold mine here, and you want to waste time and resources on unnecessary precautions? Our technology is perfectly safe. We should be focusing on maximizing our output, not coddling every pebble and shrub." A ripple of unease passed through the Talaxian delegation. High Counselor Zax's expression hardened, his gaze fixed on Blackwell with growing disapproval. Thomas, recognizing the delicate balance of the situation, raised his hand placatingly. "Perhaps this would be an opportune moment for a brief recess. It will allow us all to collect our thoughts and consider the full implications of these proposals." Zax nodded, relief evident in his features. "Agreed. We will reconvene in 1 hour." As the delegates filed out of the chamber, Thomas pulled Petra aside, his voice low and urgent. "We need to find a way to bridge this gap. Blackwell's pushing too hard, and we're at risk of losing everything we've worked for." Petra's violet eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "Thomas, what if we incorporated traditional Talaxian land stewardship practices into the mining operations? It would show respect for their culture while still allowing for efficient resource extraction." Thomas felt a surge of admiration for Petra's insight. "That's brilliant. It could be the key to winning over the Talaxian Council without completely alienating stellar resources." When negotiations resumed, Thomas presented the modified proposal with renewed vigor. He described a harmonious blend of Earth's advanced technology and Talaxian ecological wisdom, painting a picture of sustainable progress that seemed to resonate with the assembled delegates. As he spoke, the chamber doors opened and a familiar figure entered. Zira, the environmental activist from the previous day's protest, strode in with purpose, escorted by a member of the Talaxian High Council. Thomas, without missing a beat, welcomed her presence. Zira, your input on the environmental aspects of this agreement would be invaluable. Please join us. The unexpected inclusion of a local activist in such high-level negotiations caused a stir, but Thomas pressed on, outlining how Talaxian ecological practices would be woven into every aspect of the mining operations. As the day wore on, a sense of progress began to permeate the chamber. The Zorgan delegation, impressed by Earth's flexibility, put forward a proposal for technological exchange, particularly in the field of sustainable energy production. However, just as a consensus seemed within reach, Thomas noticed Marcus Blackwell engaged in hushed conversations with individual council members during breaks. Suspicion gnawed at him, and he discreetly alerted High Counselor Zax to the situation. Zax's investigation was swift and decisive. Blackwell's attempts to undermine the negotiations with private deals were exposed, leading to his immediate expulsion from the proceedings. The incident, while tense, served to strengthen the bond of trust between Thomas and the Talaxian representatives. As the sun began to set on the Talaxian capital, casting long shadows through the chamber's high windows, the outline of a groundbreaking agreement took shape. Thomas, his voice hoarse from hours of discussion, presented the final points. We propose the implementation of stellar resources mining technology, overseen by a joint committee of experts from all three worlds. This will be integrated with Talaxian ecological practices, ensuring minimal environmental impact. A comprehensive monitoring system will be established to maintain transparency and accountability. He paused, looking around the room to gauge reactions before continuing. Furthermore, we suggest a fair distribution of mining rights and profits among Earth, Talaxis, and Zorgan. And to strengthen our alliance beyond mere economic ties, we propose cultural and technological exchange programs between our worlds. As Thomas concluded his presentation, a palpable sense of accomplishment filled the chamber. High Counselor Zax rose, his expression solemn yet tinged with hope. Ambassador Reed, he intoned, your dedication to finding a solution that respects the needs and values of all parties is commendable. While this agreement will require final approval from our respective governments, I believe we have laid the foundation for a prosperous and harmonious future. The Zorgan lead negotiator, a tall, reptilian figure named Sathek, inclined his head in agreement. We concur. This proposal demonstrates wisdom and foresight. As the delegates began to disperse, many paused to offer Thomas words of appreciation and respect. Zira approached him, her earlier hostility replaced by cautious optimism. You have shown that humans can indeed be partners in preserving our world, she said. I will be watching closely to ensure these promises are kept. Thomas nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility that came with her words. As the chamber emptied, he found himself alone with Petra, the events of the day hanging heavily between them. We did it, Petra said softly, her hand brushing against his. Thomas felt a rush of emotions, relief, pride, and something deeper that he wasn't quite ready to name. Before he could respond, his communication device buzzed insistently. Frowning, he activated the holographic display to read the urgent message from the human delegation. As his eyes scanned the text, Thomas felt the brief moment of triumph slip away. News of the potential agreement had leaked, and the response back on Earth was far from uniformly positive. Conservative factions were up in arms about the inclusion of alien practices in human mining operations, while environmental groups were demanding even stricter protections. Thomas looked up from the message to meet Petra's concerned gaze. He knew that the challenges ahead would test not only his diplomatic skills, but also the growing bond between them. As they left the council chambers together, the success of the day tempered by the looming complications, Thomas couldn't help but feel that their journey, both diplomatic and personal, was just the beginning. Thomas exhaled slowly, his mind already racing with strategies to address the unfolding situation back home. "Petra," he said, turning to face her, "I need to return to Earth immediately. The news of our agreement has leaked, and it's causing quite a stir." Petra's violet eyes widened with concern. "Is it that bad?" Thomas nodded grimly. Conservative factions are up in arms about incorporating alien practices into our mining operations, and environmental groups are demanding even stricter protections. I have to address this before it spirals out of control. "I understand," Petra replied, her voice tinged with disappointment. "What about our work here?" "That's where I need your help," Thomas said, his expression softening. "Can you stay on Talaxis as a liaison? We need someone to maintain the balance we've achieved and address any concerns that arise." Petra straightened, her posture reflecting her dedication. "Of course. I'll do everything I can to keep the treaty alive while you're gone." Within hours, Thomas was aboard a shuttle bound for Earth. As he watched the blue-green orb of Talaxis recede through the view screen, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was leaving a part of himself behind. The journey back to Earth was a blur of preparation and strategy sessions. Thomas pored over reports, drafted speeches, and coordinated with his team to prepare for the political battle ahead. Upon arrival, he was immediately whisked away to the United Earth Council chambers. The grand hall buzzed with tension as Thomas took his place at the podium, facing the assembled council members and a sea of media drones capturing his every move. "Esteemed council members," Thomas began, his voice steady despite the pressure, "I stand before you today to present the details of a groundbreaking agreement between Earth, Talaxis, and Zorgan. This treaty represents not just an economic opportunity, but a chance for unprecedented technological and cultural exchange." As Thomas delved into the specifics of the agreement, he could see the council members' reactions ranging from intrigued nods to skeptical frowns. He emphasized the advanced mining technology Earth would gain access to, the environmental safeguards built into the agreement, and the potential for clean energy breakthroughs through collaboration with the Zorgans. "This agreement doesn't just secure our economic future," Thomas continued, his voice gaining strength. "It positions Earth as a key player in interstellar diplomacy and trade. We have the opportunity to lead by example, showing that cooperation between species can lead to mutual prosperity and technological advancement." The chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices as council members began to debate. Thomas fielded questions rapid fire, drawing on his extensive diplomatic experience to address concerns about alien influence, job displacement, and cultural preservation. As the session stretched into its fourth hour, Thomas noticed a shift in the room's energy. More council members were nodding along with his points, and even some of the initial skeptics seemed to be coming around. However, his small victory was short-lived. As he left the council chambers, Thomas was confronted by a throng of reporters and protesters. At the forefront stood a tall, charismatic man with piercing blue eyes and a voice that carried over the crowd. "Ambassador Reed," the man called out. "Victor Stern, representing the Earth First Coalition. How do you respond to accusations that this treaty will lead to alien domination of our resources and the corruption of human culture?" Thomas felt a chill run down his spine as he recognized the name. Victor Stern was a rising star in Earth politics, known for his xenophobic rhetoric and populist appeal. This was the start of a battle Thomas hadn't anticipated. Over the next few weeks, Thomas found himself in a whirlwind of public appearances, private meetings, and political maneuvering. He organized demonstrations of the new mining technology, showcasing its efficiency and minimal environmental impact. The public's reaction was mixed, with many fascinated by the advanced alien tech, while others recoiled at its otherworldly appearance. Meanwhile, Stern's Earth First Coalition gained momentum, staging protests and flooding media channels with anti-alien propaganda. Their message of fear and isolationism resonated with those who felt threatened by the rapid changes in Earth's relationship with alien species. Thomas worked tirelessly to counter this narrative, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was fighting an uphill battle. Late one night, as he sat in his office reviewing the latest polling data, his communication device chimed with an incoming call from Talaxis. Petra's holographic image appeared, her familiar features a welcome sight after weeks of tension and conflict. "Thomas," she said, her voice filled with concern, "how are things progressing on Earth?" As Thomas updated her on the situation, he found himself opening up about his frustrations and doubts. Petra listened intently, offering support and insights from her work on Talaxis. "You know," Petra said thoughtfully, "perhaps what Earth needs is a more personal connection to Talaxis. Would it be helpful if I arrange for a delegation of Talaxian scientists and cultural ambassadors to visit?" Thomas's eyes lit up at the suggestion. "Petra, that's brilliant. A delegation could help humanize, if you'll pardon the expression, the Talaxians in the eyes of the Earth public. Can you make it happen?" Petra nodded, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Consider it done. I'll lead the delegation myself." As Thomas ended the call, he felt a renewed sense of purpose and energy. He also couldn't ignore the flutter in his chest at the thought of seeing Petra again. Pushing those feelings aside, he turned his focus to preparing for the Talaxian delegation's arrival, knowing that the coming days would be crucial in shaping Earth's future among the stars. Stars. With renewed drive, Thomas turned his attention to the upcoming United Earth Council session, where the fate of the interstellar agreement would be decided. As Thomas entered the council chamber, he felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. The room buzzed with anticipation, a palpable tension hanging in the air. He scanned the audience, his gaze settling on Petra, who offered a reassuring nod. Taking a deep breath, Thomas approached the podium, ready to deliver his closing argument. "Esteemed council members," he began, his voice steady and clear, "we stand at a crossroads in human history. The decision we make today will shape our future among the stars." Thomas outlined the benefits of the treaty with measured enthusiasm, his words painting a vivid picture of a prosperous Earth engaged in mutually beneficial relationships with Talaxis and Zorgan. He addressed concerns about alien influence head-on, presenting concrete safeguards and emphasizing the importance of cultural exchange. "This agreement isn't about losing our identity," Thomas asserted, his voice rising with conviction. "It's about expanding our horizons, learning from our galactic neighbors, and securing a brighter future for generations to come." As Thomas concluded his speech, a ripple of approval spread through the chamber. However, the moment was short-lived. Victor Stern, the charismatic leader of the Earth First Coalition, rose to his feet, his piercing blue eyes flashing with defiance. "Mr. Chairman, I demand the right to speak," Stern called out, his powerful voice cutting through the murmurs of the assembly. Granted permission, Stern launched into a fiery tirade against the treaty. His words, carefully crafted to stoke fears of alien domination and cultural erosion, resonated with many in the chamber. Are we to sacrifice our sovereignty, our very way of life, for the empty promises of alien races? Stern's voice boomed. This treaty is nothing short of a Trojan horse, designed to weaken us from within. The chamber erupted into chaos, with council members shouting over each other. Thomas remained at the podium, his expression calm as he prepared to refute Stern's arguments. Suddenly, a shrill alarm cut through the din. The chamber fell silent as an urgent holographic message materialized in the center of the room. A chill ran down Thomas's spine as he absorbed the information displayed before them. "Counselors," the message read, "a massive asteroid has been detected on a collision course with Earth. Impact estimated in 72 hours. Immediate action required. The chamber exploded into pandemonium. Council members leapt to their feet, shouting questions and demands. Thomas's mind raced, quickly assessing the situation and its implications. In that moment of crisis, he saw an opportunity. "Mr. Chairman," Thomas called out, his voice cutting through the chaos, "I propose an immediate implementation of the treaty's technology-sharing clause to address this threat." The chamber fell silent, all eyes turning to Thomas. He pressed on, outlining a plan to leverage Talaxian deflection technology and Zorgan piloting expertise to combat the asteroid. Petra stood, her violet eyes gleaming with tenacity. "The Talaxian delegation offers our most advanced deflection systems to aid Earth in this time of crisis," she announced. Not to be outdone, the Zorgan representative, Sadhek, rose as well. "Zorgan pledges its most skilled pilots to assist in this mission," he declared, his reptilian features set in a grim expression of solidarity. Victor Stern, sensing the shifting mood in the chamber, made a last-ditch effort to discredit the alien offer. "How do we know this isn't a ploy to weaken our defenses?" he shouted, his face flushed with anger. But his words fell on deaf ears. The urgent nature of the threat had cut through the political posturing, uniting the chamber in a common purpose. The council voted swiftly, accepting the alien assistance and appointing Thomas to lead the joint Earth-Talaxian-Zorgan task force. As the chamber emptied, council members rushing to their emergency stations, Thomas found himself face to face with Petra. "We have work to do," she said, her expression a mix of tenacity and something deeper unspoken. Thomas nodded, pushing aside the flutter in his chest. "Let's save the world," he replied, leading the way out of the chamber and into the unknown challenges that lay ahead. As they hurried towards the command center, Thomas couldn't help but feel that this crisis might be the catalyst needed to forge a true interstellar alliance. The next few days would test not only their technology and skills, but also the very foundation of trust between their species. With Petra by his side, Thomas steeled himself for the monumental task ahead, knowing that the fate of Earth and the future of interstellar relations hung in the balance. Balance in favor of the treaty. As the asteroid crisis receded into recent memory, Earth's attention turned once again to the looming vote on the interstellar treaty. The United Earth Council chamber buzzed with anticipation as council members, media representatives, and delegates from Talaxis and Zorgan filed in. Thomas and Petra took their seats at the front, acutely aware of the curious glances and whispers their presence elicited. The council president's voice rang out, calling the session to order. Just as the proceedings began, a commotion erupted in the public gallery. A group of protesters, led by Victor Stern, unfurled banners emblazoned with anti-alien slogans. Their chants echoed through the chamber, disrupting the solemnity of the occasion. "Earth for humans, no alien influence," they shouted, their voices rising in unison. Security personnel moved swiftly, surrounding the protesters and escorting the most vocal among them out of the chamber. Thomas watched as Stern was led away, his face contorted with anger and frustration. Once order was restored, the council president called for final arguments before the vote. Thomas stood, his heart pounding as he approached the podium. He took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping across the assembled council members. "Esteemed colleagues," he began, his voice steady and clear, "we stand at the threshold of a new era. The recent asteroid crisis has shown us the immense value of interstellar cooperation. It was not Earth alone that averted disaster, but the combined efforts of humans, Talaxians, and Zorgans." Thomas continued, his words painting a vivid picture of the future possibilities. He spoke of technological advancements, cultural exchanges, and the potential for mutual growth and understanding. As he concluded, a ripple of approving murmurs spread through the chamber. Victor Stern, granted a final opportunity to speak, strode to the podium. His charisma was undeniable, his blue eyes flashing with conviction as he addressed the council. "Do not be fooled by promises of progress and cooperation," Stern warned, his voice resonating through the chamber. "This treaty will lead us down a path of dependence on alien technology. We risk losing our autonomy, our very identity as humans." Despite Stern's impassioned plea, his arguments fell flat. Many council members openly dismissed his claims, their recent experiences during the asteroid crisis fresh in their minds. As the voting process began, tension filled the air. Council members cast their votes electronically, the results displayed on a large screen for all to see. Thomas and Petra watched, their fingers intertwined beneath the table as the numbers climbed. Suddenly, a murmur of surprise rippled through the chamber. A group of council members who had previously opposed the treaty switched their votes at the last minute. Thomas leaned forward, his eyes wide as he watched the balance shift. The council president's voice rang out, announcing the final tally. The interstellar treaty passes with a margin of 52% in favor. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of cheers and protests. Thomas and Petra exchanged relieved glances, the weight of their accomplishment settling over them. As the council president officially ratified the treaty, Stern and his remaining supporters stormed out of the chamber, their exit largely ignored amidst the celebrations. The Talaxian and Zorgan delegations approached, their faces alight with excitement. Sadhek, the Zorgan representative, clasped Thomas's hand in his scaly grip. "This is a momentous day for all our species," Sadhek hissed, his forked tongue flicking with enthusiasm. As the celebrations continued, Thomas noticed Admiral Helena Robertson approaching. The head of Earth's newly formed Interstellar Affairs Department wore a serious expression as she pulled Thomas aside. "Ambassador Reed," she began, her voice low, "in light of your crucial role in negotiating this treaty and managing the asteroid crisis, we've selected you to lead Earth's first official diplomatic mission to Talaxis." Thomas blinked, momentarily stunned by the magnitude of this new responsibility. His gaze drifted to Petra, who stood nearby in conversation with a group of Talaxian delegates. She caught his eye, offering an encouraging smile. "It's an honor, Admiral," Thomas replied, his mind already racing with the implications of this assignment. "When do we depart?" "Preparations begin immediately," Robertson answered. "You will be establishing a permanent human presence on Talaxis and overseeing the implementation of the treaty's provisions." As the Admiral moved away to speak with other officials, Thomas found himself approached by a swarm of media drones, their cameras whirring as they captured his image. Reporters shouted questions, their voices blending into a chaotic din. "Ambassador Reed, what are your plans for the diplomatic mission to Talaxis? How do you respond to concerns about human-alien integration?" Thomas raised his hands, gesturing for calm. "Earth is entering a new age of interstellar cooperation," he began, choosing his words carefully. "Our mission to Talaxis will focus on fostering mutual understanding and implementing the technological and cultural exchanges outlined in the treaty." As the day's events wound down, Thomas and Petra found a quiet moment away from the crowds. They stood on a balcony overlooking the city, watching as celebratory fireworks painted the night sky in brilliant hues. "So," Petra said softly, her violet eyes reflecting the shimmering lights, "it seems you'll be spending quite a bit of time on Talaxis." Thomas turned to face her, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "It appears so," he replied, his voice low. "I don't suppose you know anyone who might be willing to help a human navigate Talaxian customs and culture?" Petra's lips curved into a smile. "I might know someone," she teased. Then, her expression growing more serious, she added, "Thomas, whatever this is between us, I want to explore it further." Thomas nodded, his heart racing. "So do I," he admitted, "but we'll need to proceed carefully. There will be a lot of eyes on us, especially now." As they stood there, Contemplating the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead, Thomas's communicator chimed. It was a message from his team, requesting his presence to begin preparations for the Talaxis mission. With a sigh, Thomas turned back to Petra. "Duty calls," he said ruefully. Petra nodded in understanding. "Go," she said softly. "We have time." As Thomas headed back into the council building, his mind was already racing with plans for the mission ahead. The ratification of the treaty was just the beginning. Now came the real challenge, turning the promise of interstellar cooperation into a reality. Reality. As Thomas turned away from the balcony, his mind already racing with plans for the upcoming mission, he knew that the real work was just beginning. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. The United Earth Council moved swiftly to assemble a diverse team of experts to accompany Thomas and Petra on their journey to Talaxis. Xenobiologists, cultural anthropologists, and advanced technology specialists were carefully selected, each bringing unique skills and knowledge to the mission. As the launch date approached, media attention intensified. News outlets from around the world clamored for interviews with Thomas and Petra, speculating on the potential outcomes of this unprecedented interstellar venture. Thomas found himself constantly in the public eye, fielding questions about Earth's new role in the galactic community. On the day of departure, a massive crowd gathered at the newly constructed interstellar spaceport. The air buzzed with excitement as people from all walks of life came to witness this historic moment. Thomas stood at the base of the USS Harmony, a state-of-the-art starship designed specifically for long-distance interstellar travel. Its sleek hull gleamed in the sunlight, a testament to the fusion of human ingenuity and Talaxian-inspired technology. As Thomas and Petra boarded the ship, followed by their team of experts, the crowd erupted in cheers. The USS Harmony's engines hummed to life, and Thomas felt a surge of anticipation as the ship lifted off, leaving Earth's atmosphere behind. Once they were in space, Thomas and Petra found a moment of privacy on the observation deck. They stood side by side, watching as Earth grew smaller in the distance, a blue marble suspended in the vastness of space. "It's beautiful," Petra murmured, her violet eyes reflecting the starfield before them. Thomas nodded, acutely aware of her presence beside him. "And a little terrifying," he admitted. "We're making history, Petra. The success or failure of this mission could shape the future of interstellar relations for generations to come." Petra turned to face him, her expression serious. "We're in this together, Thomas. Whatever challenges we face, we'll face them as a team." Their eyes met, and Thomas felt a familiar flutter in his chest. The urge to reach out and touch her was almost overwhelming, but he held back, conscious of their professional roles and the responsibilities that weighed upon them. The journey to Talaxis provided ample opportunity for the diplomatic team to prepare for their arrival. Thomas worked closely with the cultural anthropologists, absorbing every detail about Talaxian customs and social norms. Petra's insights proved invaluable, helping the human delegates navigate potential cultural pitfalls. During one of their strategy sessions, a young xenobiologist named Dr. Ilara Chen raised her hand. "Ambassador Reed, I've been studying Talaxian biology, and I have concerns about potential health risks for our team. Their atmosphere contains trace elements that could be harmful to humans over long-term exposure." Thomas nodded, making a note on his data pad. "Excellent point, Dr. Chen. We'll need to work with our Talaxian hosts to ensure proper safeguards are in place. Petra, can you arrange a meeting with their health ministry upon our arrival?" Petra nodded, her fingers dancing across her own data pad. "Consider it done. I'll also brief the team on Talaxian medical practices. Their approach to healthcare is quite different from ours, and it's important we understand the basics." As they delved deeper into space, the USS Harmony encountered an unexpected challenge. The ship's sensors detected an uncharted asteroid field directly in their path, forcing a detour. Thomas stood on the bridge, watching as the navigation team plotted a new course. "Sir," the chief navigator called out, "this detour is taking us through an unexplored sector. We're picking up some interesting readings from a nearby star system." Thomas leaned in, studying the data on the main view screen. "What kind of readings?" "Multiple planets. Sir, at least one appears to be in the habitable zone. And there are indications of significant mineral deposits throughout the system." Thomas exchanged a glance with Petra, both recognizing the potential implications of this discovery. "Log the coordinates and gather as much data as you can," Thomas ordered. "We'll forward the information to Earth and Talaxis. This could be an opportunity for our first joint exploration mission." As they approached Talaxian space, the ship's communication array crackled to life. A distress signal, faint but unmistakable, reached the USS Harmony. "Ambassador," the communications officer reported, "we're picking up a distress call from a Zorgan freighter. They're under attack by what appear to be space pirates." Thomas's mind raced, weighing the risks and potential benefits of intervention. He turned to Petra, seeking her input. "The treaty calls for mutual aid and support," she said softly. "How we respond to this will set a precedent for future interactions." Thomas nodded, his decision made. "Helm, set an intercept course. Tactical, prepare defensive systems. Let's show the galaxy what this new era of cooperation looks like in action." The USS Harmony surged forward, its advanced engines propelling the ship towards the coordinates of the distressed Zorgan vessel. As they closed in, the view screen illuminated with the chaotic scene of battle. The Zorgan freighter, a bulky vessel designed for hauling cargo rather than combat, was desperately evading weapons fire from three smaller, agile ships. "Hail the pirate vessels," Thomas commanded. "Give them one chance to withdraw before we engage." The response came in the form of weapons fire directed at the USS Harmony. The ship shuddered as its shields absorbed the impact. "So be it," Thomas muttered. "Tactical, target their weapons and propulsion systems. Disable, don't destroy." What followed was a display of precision and power that left both the Zorgan crew and the human diplomatic team in awe. The USS Harmony's advanced targeting systems, enhanced by Talaxian technology, made short work of the pirate vessel's defenses. Within minutes, all three ships were adrift, their weapons and engines disabled. As the security team prepared to board the pirate vessels, Thomas turned his attention to the Zorgan freighter. "Open a channel," he instructed. The view screen flickered, revealing the reptilian features of the Zorgan captain. His scales were a mottled green, and his yellow eyes blinked rapidly as he took in the human bridge crew. "This is Ambassador Thomas Reed of the USS Harmony," Thomas began, conscious of Petra standing supportively at his side. "We're here to assist. Are you in need of medical aid or repairs?" The Zorgan captain's forked tongue flicked out, a gesture Thomas had learned indicated surprise and gratitude. "Ambassador Reed," the captain hissed, his translator conveying the words in crisp English. "Your timely intervention has saved our lives and our cargo. We are in your debt." As the security team reported the successful capture of the pirates and the Zorgan freighter began docking procedures for necessary repairs, Thomas couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. This unexpected encounter had provided a tangible demonstration of the benefits of interstellar cooperation. Petra leaned in close, her voice low. "You handled that beautifully, Thomas. The Zorgans won't forget this act of assistance." Thomas nodded, aware of the warmth of her presence beside him. "Let's hope it sets the tone for future interactions," he replied. "We still have a long way to go before we reach Talaxis, and I have a feeling this is just the first of many challenges we'll face." As the USS Harmony resumed its course towards Talaxian space, Thomas retreated to his quarters to prepare a report on the incident for Earth and the Talaxian High Council. The encounter with the pirates had been unplanned, but it had provided valuable insights into the practical applications of the Interstellar Treaty. As he sat down to compose his thoughts, Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger adventure. As he finished his report and prepared to send it to Earth and the Talaxian High Council, Thomas's communicator chimed with an incoming message from Petra. "Thomas, we're approaching Talaxian space." Her voice came through, excitement evident in her tone. "You might want to come to the observation deck. The view is breathtaking." Intrigued, Thomas made his way to the deck, where he found Petra and several other crew members gathered at the large viewing window. As he stepped beside her, his breath caught in his throat. Before them stretched a vast expanse of swirling, iridescent clouds, punctuated by glowing points of light that seemed to pulse with life. The Talaxian home system was a riot of color and energy, unlike anything Thomas had ever seen. "Welcome to Talaxis," Petra said softly, her violet eyes reflecting the mesmerizing display before them. As the USS Harmony entered the system, Thomas noticed a flurry of activity. Talaxian ships of various sizes and designs moved in intricate patterns, their hulls adorned with vibrant patterns that seemed to shift and change. "What's going on?" Thomas asked, gesturing to the bustling space traffic. Petra's lips curved into a smile. "We've arrived just in time for the Talaxian Fertility Festival," she explained. "It's one of our most important cultural events. The entire capital city will be transformed for the celebration." Thomas raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "I wasn't aware we'd be arriving during a major festival. Will this affect our diplomatic schedule?" "On the contrary," Petra replied, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "The High Council has extended an invitation for you and your delegation to participate as honored guests. It's an unprecedented gesture of goodwill." As the USS Harmony descended through the atmosphere, Thomas marveled at the sight of the Talaxian capital. The city was a breathtaking fusion of organic architecture and advanced technology. Towering spires of living crystal pulsed with bioluminescent light, while anti-gravity platforms carried citizens between floating gardens and bustling marketplaces. The air was filled with a cacophony of sounds and a symphony of scents as they disembarked. Talaxians of all ages lined the streets, their scales shimmering in a dazzling array of colors. Many wore elaborate headdresses and body adornments, clearly part of the festival attire. A group of dignitaries, led by an elderly Talaxian with silvery scales, approached the human delegation. Petra stepped forward to make introductions. "Ambassador Reed, this is Elder Zaxlor, head of the Talaxian Cultural Ministry," she said. The elder bowed his head respectfully. "Welcome to Talaxis, Ambassador. We are honored by your presence during this auspicious time." Thomas returned the gesture, careful to mirror the elder's movements as he'd been taught. "The honor is ours, Elder Zaxlor. We're grateful for your hospitality and the opportunity to learn more about your culture." As they were escorted through the city, Elder Zaxlor explained the significance of the Fertility Festival. "It is a time of renewal and connection," he said, his voice carrying a hint of reverence. "The festival celebrates the bonds between individuals and the continuation of our species." Thomas listened intently, noting the parallels and differences with human customs. As they walked, he couldn't help but notice the way Talaxians moved in pairs and groups, their bodies often in close contact. The air seemed charged with an almost palpable energy. They arrived at a vast plaza, where preparations for the festival were in full swing. Artisans wove intricate tapestries of light, while others arranged displays of exotic flora that seemed to respond to music played by nearby musicians. Elder Zaxlor turned to Thomas, his expression serious. "Ambassador, as our honored guests, we would be deeply grateful if you and your delegation would participate in some of our traditional rituals." Thomas glanced at Petra, who nodded encouragingly. "We would be honored," he replied. "What do these rituals entail?" The elder's face brightened. "The centerpiece of our festival is a series of courtship rituals, traditionally performed by potential mates to demonstrate their compatibility. Petra can guide you through them." As Elder Zaxlor moved away to speak with other officials, Thomas turned to Petra, his heart rate quickening. "Courtship rituals?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. Petra's scales flushed a deeper shade of blue. "Don't worry," she said softly. "I'll be with you every step of the way. The first ritual is a synchronized dance. It requires intimate physical contact between partners." Thomas swallowed hard, suddenly very aware of Petra's proximity. "I see," he managed. "And we'll be performing this dance together?" Petra nodded, her eyes meeting his. "If you're comfortable with that. It's considered a great honor for an off-worlder to participate." As the sun began to set, casting the city in a warm, golden glow, Thomas found himself standing beside Petra in a circular courtyard. Other couples, both Talaxian and a few brave humans from the delegation, took their positions around them. Soft, ethereal music began to play, and Petra gently took Thomas's hands. "Just follow my lead," she whispered. As they began to move, Thomas was acutely aware of every point of contact between them. Petra's scales were smooth and warm against his skin, and her movements were fluid and graceful. He did his best to mirror her, feeling clumsy at first, but gradually finding a rhythm. The dance grew more complex, requiring them to twirl and intertwine in ways that left Thomas breathless. At one point, Petra's back was pressed against his chest, her head resting on his shoulder as they swayed in perfect synchronization. Thomas could feel his heart pounding, and not just from the exertion of the dance. The intimacy of the moment, combined with the charged atmosphere of the festival, was making it increasingly difficult to maintain his professional composure. As the music reached a crescendo, Petra spun to face him, their faces mere inches apart. Time seemed to slow as they gazed into each other's eyes, both acutely aware of the growing attraction between them. The dance ended, and a round of applause broke the spell. Thomas and Petra stepped apart, both slightly flushed and breathing heavily. "You did well," Petra said, her voice husky. Before Thomas could respond, Elder Zaxlor approached, beaming with approval. "Excellent, excellent," he exclaimed. "You have a natural affinity for our customs, ambassador. Now, if you'll follow me, it's time for the second ritual, the shared meal." As they were led to a table laden with exotic Talaxian delicacies, Thomas caught sight of Dr. Ilara Chun, the xenobiologist from their ship. She was deep in conversation with a Talaxian scientist, her expression one of fascination and concern. Thomas made a mental note to check in with Dr. Chun later. For now, he had another ritual to navigate, one that promised to be just as challenging to his self-control as the dance had been. Petra took a seat beside him, her knee brushing against his under the table. She picked up a small, iridescent fruit and held it up to his lips. "Are you ready?" she asked, her violet eyes sparkling with a mixture of amusement and something deeper, more intense. Thomas nodded, opening his mouth to accept the offering. As the sweet, complex flavors burst on his tongue, he realized that maintaining a purely professional relationship with Petra was becoming an increasingly impossible task. The night was still young, and Thomas had a feeling that the fertility festival had many more surprises in store, surprises that would test the boundaries of diplomacy, culture, and his own heart. Personal grit. As the festival continued, Thomas found himself increasingly drawn into the vibrant tapestry of Talaxian culture. The days blurred together in a whirlwind of colors, scents, and new experiences. He and Petra moved through the city, participating in various ceremonies and rituals, each one bringing them closer together. On the morning of the final and most significant ritual, Thomas woke with a mix of anticipation and nervousness coursing through his veins. He dressed in the ceremonial robes provided by the Talaxians, the fabric shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence. Petra met him outside his quarters, her scales gleaming with a deep, rich blue that seemed to reflect her own excitement. "Are you ready?" she asked, her violet eyes searching his face. Thomas nodded, swallowing hard. As ready as I'll ever be, he replied, managing a smile. They made their way to the outskirts of the Talaxian capital, where a sacred grove awaited them. As they approached, Thomas gasped in awe. Ancient trees with luminescent leaves created a canopy of soft, pulsating light. The air hummed with energy, and the ground seemed to vibrate beneath their feet. An elderly Talaxian with silvery scales greeted them at the entrance to the grove. "Welcome," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Today, you will participate in our most sacred ritual. It will test your compatibility, your trust, and your ability to work as one." The elder led them to a clearing where other couples, both Talaxian and human, were gathering. He explained the series of challenges they would face, each designed to bring them closer together. The first challenge began without warning. Thomas felt a soft cloth being placed over his eyes, and he heard Petra's sharp intake of breath as she was similarly blindfolded. The elder's voice rang out. "Navigate the maze before you, using only your voices and touch to guide each other." Thomas reached out, his hand finding Petra's. Her scales were cool and smooth against his skin. "Ready?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Always," she replied, squeezing his hand. They moved forward slowly, feeling their way through the twisting paths of the maze. Thomas listened intently to Petra's instructions, trusting her completely as she guided him around obstacles and through narrow passages. In turn, he warned her of low-hanging branches and uneven ground, his hands gently steering her clear of danger. As they progressed, Thomas became acutely aware of every point of contact between them. The brush of her arm against his, the warmth of her breath as she leaned close to whisper directions. Their movements became more fluid, more in sync, as if they were becoming one entity. Finally, they emerged from the maze, breathless and exhilarated. As they removed their blindfolds, Thomas caught Petra's gaze. The look they shared was charged with unspoken emotions. The second challenge brought them to the base of a towering alien structure. Its surface was smooth and seemed to shift colors as they watched. The elder explained that they must climb to the top, working in perfect harmony. Thomas and Petra began their ascent, their bodies pressed close as they supported each other. The structure was challenging, requiring them to coordinate their movements with precision. Thomas found handholds where Petra couldn't reach, while she used her superior agility to navigate tricky sections. As they climbed higher, the physical exertion and proximity intensified the connection between them. Thomas could feel Petra's heartbeat, rapid and strong, matching his own. Their breathing synchronized, and they moved as if they'd been climbing together for years. When they reached the top, they paused for a moment, still entangled in each other's arms. The view of the Talaxian capital spread out before them, a breathtaking vista of organic architecture and swirling colors. But Thomas found his gaze drawn to Petra, her scales shimmering with exertion, her eyes bright with triumph. The third challenge brought them to a sacred pool filled with bioluminescent algae. As they entered the water, the algae reacted, swirling around them in complex patterns of light. The Talaxian observers murmured in excitement, pointing at the unusually vibrant display. Thomas and Petra moved through the water, their bodies leaving trails of light in their wake. The coolness of the pool was a welcome relief after the climb, but Thomas felt a different kind of heat building within him. Every brush of Petra's scales against his skin sent sparks of electricity through his body. As they completed the ritual bath, Thomas noticed Dr. Lara Voss watching them intently, her brow furrowed in concentration as she made notes on a data pad. He made a mental note to speak with her later, curious about what she might have observed. The final challenge was announced, a complex Talaxian mating dance. As the music began, a haunting melody that seemed to resonate in Thomas's very bones, he and Petra took their positions. The dance was unlike anything Thomas had ever experienced. Their bodies moved in perfect synchronization, twisting and turning, coming together and apart in a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. As they danced, Thomas lost all sense of where he ended and Petra began. Suddenly, the grove erupted in light. The bioluminescent plants surrounding them pulsed with an intensity that took Thomas's breath away. The Talaxian elder's voice cut through the music, declaring this a sign of extraordinary compatibility. As the dance concluded, Thomas and Petra stood facing each other, both panting slightly. The air between them crackled with tension, and Thomas found himself leaning in, drawn by an irresistible force. Before their lips could meet, a commotion at the edge of the grove broke the spell. A human aide rushed forward, a look of urgency on his face. "Ambassador Reed," he called out, "we received an urgent communication from Earth. The United Earth Council is ordering your immediate return for debriefing and medical examination." Thomas felt as if he'd been doused with cold water. He looked at Petra, seeing his own conflict mirrored in her eyes. The Talaxian elder stepped forward, his expression grave. "This is most irregular," he said. "To leave now would be a great insult to our customs and could jeopardize our alliance." As arguments broke out around them, Thomas and Petra slipped away, finding a quiet corner of the grove. "What are you going to do?" Petra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas took a deep breath, weighing his options. The diplomatic part of him knew that following orders was the safe choice. But something deeper, something awakened by the rituals they'd just completed, rebelled against the idea of leaving now. "I'm staying," he said finally, his voice firm. "Whatever consequences come, I can't walk away from this from us without seeing it through." Petra's scales flushed a deep, rich blue. Without a word, she took his hand and led him deeper into the grove, away from the arguing delegations. As they disappeared into the shadows of the luminescent trees, Thomas knew that his decision would have far-reaching consequences. But in that moment, with Petra's hand in his and the memory of their connection fresh in his mind, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. The sacred grove enveloped them in its otherworldly glow, the bioluminescent plants still pulsing with energy. As they found a secluded spot, hidden from prying eyes, Thomas and Petra faced each other, the air between them charged with unspoken possibilities. Emotions. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, words became unnecessary. Thomas leaned in, closing the distance between them, and their lips met in a passionate kiss. The world around them seemed to fade away as they lost themselves in the embrace. Thomas's hands traced the contours of Petra's scales, marveling at their smooth texture. Petra's fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. As their kiss deepened, a soft glow began to emanate from the plants surrounding them. The bioluminescent flora pulsed with increasing intensity, bathing them in an ethereal light that seemed to respond to their touch. Breathless, they finally broke apart, both acutely aware of the change in the atmosphere. The air seemed charged with electricity, and every nerve in Thomas's body tingled with heightened sensitivity. "We should go somewhere more private," Petra whispered, her violet eyes dark with desire. Thomas nodded, unable to form words. Hand in hand, they slipped away from the main grove, following a winding path deeper into the sacred forest. The luminescent plants lit their way, creating a trail of shimmering light that guided them to a secluded chamber. As they entered, Thomas gasped in awe. The room was a natural cavern, its walls adorned with clusters of glowing crystals and pulsating flora. A soft bed of moss covered the floor, inviting and comfortable. Petra pulled Thomas close, her scales flushing a deep, rich blue. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. In response, Thomas cupped her face in his hands and kissed her again, pouring all his emotions into the gesture. As they sank down onto the moss, their bodies intertwined, the bioluminescent plants around them began to pulse rhythmically, their light intensifying with each passing moment. Outside the chamber, Dr. Hilaria Voss frowned at her monitoring equipment. The biosensors tracking Thomas and Petra's vital signs were showing unprecedented readings. Their heart rates were perfectly synchronized, and their brain wave patterns were aligning in ways she'd never seen before. "This is incredible," she muttered, adjusting her instruments to ensure they were functioning correctly. "But what does it mean?" As she moved to approach the chamber, a firm hand on her shoulder stopped her. The Talaxian elder shook his head solemnly. "You must not interrupt," he said, his voice carrying the weight of ancient wisdom. "What is happening now is sacred and must be allowed to unfold naturally." Inside the chamber, Thomas and Petra were lost in a world of sensation. Every touch sent sparks of pleasure coursing through their bodies. As their intimacy deepened, the energy between them seemed to resonate with the alien flora, creating a mesmerizing display of light and color. Thomas felt as if he was melting into Petra, their bodies and minds merging in ways he'd never thought possible. He could sense her thoughts, feel her emotions as if they were his own. Images flashed through his mind. Glimpses of Petra's childhood, her hopes and fears, her deepest desires. Petra gasped as she experienced a similar phenomenon, seeing flashes of Thomas's life on Earth, feeling the weight of his responsibilities and the loneliness he'd carried for so long. Their union transcended the physical, becoming a melding of minds and souls. As they reached the peak of their passion, a surge of energy emanated from their bodies. The bioluminescent plants exploded in a dazzling display of light, and for a moment, the entire grove seemed to pulse with their combined life force. Outside, alarms blared as electronic devices throughout the sacred grove suddenly went dark. Dr. Voss's monitoring equipment sputtered and died, leaving her staring at blank screens in disbelief. In orbit around Talaxis, the sensors of the approaching Earth fleet detected the energy surge. Admiral Helena Robertson, leader of the conservative faction, leaned forward in her command chair, her eyes narrowing. "What was that?" she demanded. Her science officer shook his head, bewildered. "Unknown, Admiral. It appears to be some kind of bioelectric pulse, but on a scale I've never seen before." Robertson's teeth clenched. "Increase speed. Whatever's happening down there, we need to put a stop to it now." Back in the chamber, Thomas and Petra lay entwined, their bodies glistening with sweat, their breath coming in soft pants. As the afterglow of their union faded, they became aware of a change within themselves. Thomas blinked, his mind suddenly flooded with complex Talaxian concepts that he'd struggled to grasp before. He could see the intricate connections between their culture, biology, and technology with perfect clarity. Beside him, Petra gasped as a wave of human emotions washed over her. She found herself understanding the nuances of Thomas's feelings in a way that went beyond mere empathy. As they marveled at these new sensations, neither was aware of the chaos unfolding outside. They didn't know about the approaching Earth fleet, the panic gripping the Talaxian capital, or the diplomatic crisis brewing. For now, they were lost in the wonder of their newfound connection, oblivious to the storm that was about to break over their heads. Dr. Voss, her equipment finally back online, stared at her readings in shock. The genetic structures of both Thomas and Petra had undergone subtle but significant changes. She couldn't begin to understand the implications, but one thing was clear: the consequences of this union would reach far beyond this sacred grove. As Thomas and Petra began to stir, preparing to face the world outside their private sanctuary, they were unaware that their actions had set in motion events that would shape the future of human-alien relations for generations to come. The challenges that lay ahead would test not only their newfound bond, but the very foundations of interspecies cooperation. As Thomas and Petra emerged from their secluded chamber, the gravity of their situation hit them like a shockwave. The sacred grove was in chaos, with Talaxian officials and human diplomats arguing heatedly. Dr. Voss rushed towards them, her face a mix of concern and scientific curiosity. "Ambassador Reed, we have a situation," she said, her voice urgent. "An Earth fleet has entered the system. They're demanding your immediate return and threatening military action if we don't comply. Thomas felt Petra tense beside him, her scales shifting to a deep purple, a color he now instinctively recognized as anxiety. He squeezed her hand reassuringly, surprised by how natural the gesture felt. "We need to act fast," Thomas said, his mind racing. "Dr. Voss, what's the status of the holographic display technology we were working on?" "It's operational, but we haven't had a chance to test it on this scale," she replied. "It'll have to do," Thomas said. He turned to the Talaxian elder who had approached them. "We need to convene the High Council immediately. I have a plan, but we'll need their cooperation." As they made their way to the Talaxian capital, Thomas explained his idea. They would use the massive holographic display to showcase the benefits of the Human-Talaxian alliance, hoping to deter any aggressive action from the Earth fleet. The Talaxian High Council chamber was a marvel of organic architecture, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent veins. As Thomas presented his plan, he found himself understanding the complex Talaxian language with surprising ease, the words flowing from his lips as if he'd spoken them all his life. Petra, standing by his side, added her own insights, her newfound grasp of human psychology allowing her to anticipate and address the Council's concerns before they were even voiced. With the Council's approval secured, they raced against time to implement their plan. Thomas worked with the Talaxian technicians to calibrate the holographic systems, his enhanced understanding of their technology allowing him to make adjustments that would have taken days in mere hours. Dr. Voss and her team scrambled to ensure compatibility with Earth systems, their fingers flying over control panels as they made last-minute adjustments. As the Earth fleet entered visual range of Talaxis, Thomas felt a familiar tingling at the base of his skull. A vision flashed before his eyes, a potential future where missiles streaked from the Earth's ships, Talaxian cities erupting in flames. He shook his head, banishing the image. Not if he could help it. "Now!" he shouted, and Petra activated the display. The space around Talaxis exploded with light and color. Massive, vibrant images filled the void, showcasing scenes of human-Talaxian cooperation. The successful asteroid deflection mission played out in vivid detail, followed by footage of joint mining operations and cultural exchanges. At the center of it all, an enormous image of Thomas and Petra appeared, their hands clasped, symbolizing the potential for harmony between their species. Aboard the lead Earth ship, Admiral Victor Stern watched the display with a mixture of awe and skepticism. His weathered face, illuminated by the holographic lights, betrayed a hint of uncertainty. "Hold position," he ordered his fleet, "but maintain combat readiness." Thomas, monitoring the situation from the Talaxian control center, knew it wasn't enough. He turned to Petra, his decision made. "We need to go out there," he said. "Face them directly." Petra's scales shifted to a determined blue. "Together," she replied. Despite protests from their respective teams, Thomas and Petra boarded a small Talaxian shuttle. As they approached the Earth fleet, Thomas opened a communication channel. "This is Ambassador Thomas Reed," he announced. "I request permission to come aboard and discuss the situation face to face." There was a long pause before Admiral Stern's gruff voice came through. "Permission granted, Ambassador. But be warned, you'll be under heavy guard." As their shuttle docked with the Earth ship, Thomas felt another vision coming on. He saw flashes of a tense confrontation, of suspicious glares and raised voices. But he also saw a glimmer of understanding, a path to resolution. The shuttle door opened, and Thomas stepped out, Petra close behind him. They were immediately surrounded by armed guards, their weapons trained on the unlikely pair. Admiral Stern strode forward, his face a mask of stern authority. "Ambassador Reed," he said, his voice cold, "you have a lot of explaining to do." Thomas met the Admiral's gaze steadily, feeling Petra's quiet strength beside him. As they were led deeper into the ship for what promised to be a grueling interrogation, Thomas knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of not just their alliance, but potentially the future of human-alien relations. The ship's corridors seemed to close in around them, the tension palpable in the air. But as they approached the conference room where their fate would be decided, Thomas felt a surge of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he and Petra would face them together, a living embodiment of the very cooperation they were fighting to preserve. Thomas and Petra stood side by side, facing Admiral Stern across the conference room table. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Ambassador Reed," Stern began, his voice stern and unyielding, "I want you to undergo a full medical examination. We need to understand exactly what's happened to you." Thomas felt a flutter of apprehension in his chest. He glanced at Petra, who gave him a subtle nod of encouragement. "I'll agree to the examination," he said, turning back to Stern, "but only if Petra can accompany me." Stern's eyes narrowed, but after a moment's consideration, he nodded. "Very well. Dr. Voss will oversee the procedures." He tapped a command into his console, and moments later, Dr. Alara Voss entered the room, looking flustered but determined. As they made their way to the medical bay, Thomas could feel the eyes of the crew upon them. Some looked curious, others wary. He tried to ignore the attention, focusing instead on the warmth of Petra's hand in his. The medical bay was a stark contrast to the organic chambers of Talaxis. Gleaming metal surfaces and advanced Earth technology surrounded them as Dr. Voss began her examination. "Fascinating," she muttered as she studied the readouts. "Thomas, your genetic structure has undergone significant alterations, but it appears to have stabilized." She looked up, her eyes bright with scientific curiosity. "You've developed the ability to process Talaxian nutrients, and your physical attributes have been enhanced." Thomas flexed his hand, marveling at the newfound strength he felt coursing through his body. "What about Petra?" he asked. Dr. Voss turned her attention to the Talaxian. After a series of scans, she shook her head in amazement. "Petra's biology has also adapted. She's become more compatible with human physiology." As the examination continued, word of their unique changes spread through the ship. The medical bay soon became crowded with curious onlookers, and heated debates broke out among the Earth delegation. This could be the key to long-term colonization efforts, one scientist argued. Or it could be the first step towards losing our humanity entirely, another countered. Admiral Stern listened to the arguments with a grim expression. As the debates raged on, a communication came through from the Zorgan mediators. "We propose a series of cultural exchange programs," the Zorgan representative said, his holographic image flickering slightly. "Joint research facilities on neutral territory, where scientists from all three species can work together." Thomas watched as some of the more moderate members of the Earth delegation nodded in agreement. It was a start, but he knew they had a long way to go. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. The main view screen flickered to life, showing chaos erupting in the ship's computer core. "We're under attack," a technician shouted. "Some kind of computer virus is spreading through our systems." Thomas felt a surge of clarity, his enhanced mind racing to process the information. It's not an external attack, he realized. It's coming from within the ship. Without hesitation, he moved to a nearby console, his fingers flying over the controls with newfound speed and precision. Petra joined him, her Talaxian knowledge of bioelectric systems proving invaluable. "We need to isolate the virus," Thomas said, his voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. He reached out mentally, connecting with the Talaxian and Zorgan technicians back on their ships. Together, they worked in perfect synchronization, their combined knowledge and abilities far surpassing what any single species could achieve. Minutes ticked by as they fought against the virus, the ship's systems flickering and failing around them. Just when it seemed they might lose control entirely, Thomas found the key. "There," he shouted, implementing the final countermeasure. The virus's spread halted, then began to recede. Collective sighs of relief echoed through the command center. Admiral Stern approached Thomas, his expression a mix of gratitude and wariness. "You've saved us all, Ambassador," he said gruffly. Perhaps there's more to this alliance than I first thought." As the immediate crisis passed, discussions resumed with renewed vigor. The Talaxian High Council, communicating from the planet's surface, pushed for immediate implementation of joint scientific projects. The energy phenomenon from Ambassador Reed and Petra's union could be the key to revolutionizing interstellar travel, the Talaxian representative argued. Before Stern could respond, the ship's sensors lit up with a new alert. "Unknown vessel approaching," the tactical officer reported. "It's not matching any known configurations, human, Talaxian, or Zorgan." As all eyes turned to the view screen, Thomas felt a familiar tingling at the base of his skull. Images flashed before his eyes, glimpses of a highly advanced civilization watching, waiting. "They're here to observe us," Thomas said, his voice filled with awe. "Our alliance has caught their attention." Admiral Stern turned to Thomas, his earlier skepticism replaced by grudging respect. "What do you suggest, Ambassador?" Thomas looked at Petra, then back at the assembled representatives of Earth, Talaxis, and Zorgan. "We face this together," he said, "as one united front." As preparations began for this unprecedented first contact, Thomas and Petra found themselves at the center of it all. The future of interstellar relations hung in the balance, and they knew that the real challenges were only just beginning. The future of interstellar relations hung in the balance, and they knew that the real challenges were only just starting. As alarms blared across the ship, Thomas and Petra sprang into action. Their newfound abilities allowed them to process information at an astonishing rate, quickly formulating a plan. "Admiral Stern," Thomas said, his voice calm but urgent, "we need to assemble a joint task force immediately. This unknown vessel could be our greatest opportunity or our gravest threat." Stern nodded, his earlier skepticism replaced by a grudging respect for the human-Talaxian duo. "Agreed. I'll contact the Talaxian High Council and the Zorgan mediators." Within minutes, a diverse team of specialists from all three species had assembled in the ship's command center. Thomas and Petra took charge, their unique bond allowing them to bridge the communication gaps between the different races effortlessly. "We prepared a shuttle," a Talaxian engineer announced, gesturing to a holographic display. "It's a hybrid design, incorporating both human and Talaxian technology." Thomas examined the schematics, impressed by the seamless integration of the two technological approaches. "Perfect. We'll need a crew that reflects our alliance. 2 humans, 2 Talaxians, and 2 Zorgans." As the team boarded the shuttle, Thomas felt a familiar tingling at the base of his skull. He turned to Petra, seeing the same recognition in her eyes. "You feel it too, don't you?" he asked. Petra nodded, her scales shifting to a deep indigo. "It's similar to the energy we generate together, but more." The shuttle detached from the Earth ship and made its way toward the mysterious vessel. As they drew closer, the true scale of the alien craft became apparent. It dwarfed even the largest ships in the Earth fleet, its hull shimmering and shifting in a way that defied conventional physics. "Sensors are having trouble maintaining a lock," the human pilot reported, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's like the ship is there and not there at the same time." Suddenly, a broad-spectrum transmission filled the shuttle's communication systems. The message, broadcast in multiple languages, rang out clear and melodious. "Greetings, children of Earth, Talaxis, and Zorgan. We invite representatives of your species aboard our vessel. We specifically request the presence of the Bridge Ones, Thomas and Petra." A hush fell over the shuttle's crew. Thomas exchanged a look with Petra, then tapped his communicator. "Admiral Stern, did you receive that?" "Affirmative," Stern's gruff voice replied. It's your call, Ambassador, but be careful. After a brief discussion with the shuttle crew, Thomas made his decision. We accept the invitation, he announced to the alien vessel. We're bringing a small team with us. As they approached the colossal ship, a section of its hull seamlessly opened, revealing a cavernous docking bay. An invisible force gently guided their shuttle inside, depositing them on a smooth, pearlescent surface. Thomas led the way as they disembarked, Petra close by his side. Dr. Alara Voss followed, her scientific curiosity evident in her wide-eyed expression. A Zorgan scientist named Kraz brought up the rear, his tentacles twitching with nervous energy. The interior of the alien ship defied their expectations. Instead of sterile corridors or advanced technology, they found themselves in what appeared to be a vast, self-contained ecosystem. Earth-like gravity and a breathable atmosphere surrounded them, punctuated by towering trees and crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with inner light. From the midst of this otherworldly environment emerged a group of tall, luminescent beings. Their forms were vaguely humanoid, but composed of swirling patterns of light and energy. One of the beings stepped forward, its voice resonating not through the air, but directly in their minds. Welcome, travelers. We are the HFY, and we have been waiting for you. Thomas felt a surge of awe and anticipation. He squeezed Petra's hand, drawing strength from their connection. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, not just as a duo, but as representatives of a fledgling alliance that could reshape the future of their species and the galaxy itself. As the HFY led them deeper into the heart of their extraordinary vessel, Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of their alliance, but potentially the course of human, Talaxian, and Zorgan evolution for generations to come. Come, as the HFY led them back to their shuttle, Thomas's mind raced with the implications of what they had learned. The luminescent beings had shared knowledge beyond their wildest imaginations, including the gift of a mysterious device they called the harmonic resonator. This technology could change everything, Dr. Voss whispered, her eyes wide with excitement as she cradled the small, iridescent object in her hands. The journey back to the Earth fleet was tense with anticipation. As soon as they docked, Admiral Stern's voice crackled over the comms. Ambassador Reed, report to the command center immediately. Bring your team and whatever it is you brought back. Thomas exchanged a glance with Petra, sensing her apprehension through their bond. Together, he said softly, squeezing her hand. The command center was a flurry of activity when they arrived. The research outpost transformed into a state-of-the-art medical facility, with specialists from Earth, Talaxis, and even volunteer Novan experts arriving to assist with the impending birth. One evening, as Thomas and Petra walked through the lush gardens surrounding the outpost, they noticed the local flora seemed to be reaching out towards them. New species of plants had emerged, their structures a bizarre blend of Earth and Talaxian characteristics. Kraz, the Zorgan xenobiologist, approached them, his tentacles waving excitedly. The ecosystem here is evolving at an unprecedented rate, he explained. Your energy field appears to be catalyzing these changes. We believe this could be the key to terraforming inhospitable worlds. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden tremor that shook the ground beneath their feet. Alarms blared across the facility as researchers rushed to their stations. Seismic activity detected, the AI assistant announced. All personnel report to designated safety zones. As Thomas helped Petra to a secure area, Dr. Voss's voice came over the comm system. Everyone remain calm. We've detected an unusual energy surge from the harmonic resonator. It appears to be stabilizing the planet's core. Indeed, as quickly as it had begun, the tremor subsided. Subsequent scans revealed that Haven's tectonic stability had increased significantly, a phenomenon that caught the attention of both Alliance scientists and the Novan. As the days passed, the anticipation on Haven grew. The impending birth of the first human Talaxian child had become a symbol of hope for the future of interspecies relations. However, not everyone viewed these developments positively. Reports began to filter in of cyber attacks against communication systems, attempting to disrupt the flow of information between Haven, Earth, and Talaxis. Admiral Stern, now tasked with tracking down these extremists, sent frequent updates on their efforts to neutralize the threat. One morning, as Thomas reviewed the latest security briefing, Petra suddenly gasped, her scales shifting to a deep, pulsating blue. "Thomas," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and apprehension, "I think it's time." As if in response to Petra's words, the entire research outpost experienced a momentary blackout. Emergency power kicked in almost immediately, but something had changed. Every communication device on Haven now seemed to be linked directly to the harmonic resonator, creating an instantaneous planet-wide network. Thomas had no time to ponder this new development as he rushed Petra to the medical bay, where Dr. Voss and her team were already preparing for the delivery. As contractions intensified, the harmonic resonator's energy output surged, its pulsations seeming to synchronize with Petra's labor. The medical bay buzzed with activity as human, Talaxian, and Novan experts worked together, their focus solely on bringing this miraculous new life into the universe. Thomas held Petra's hand, their unique bond stronger than ever as they stood on the brink of a new chapter in their extraordinary journey. As Petra's grip tightened on Thomas's hand, a wave of contraction surged through her body. The medical bay erupted into a flurry of activity as Dr. Voss and her team sprang into action. Suddenly, the lights flickered and dimmed. The temperature in the room fluctuated, first dropping sharply before rising again. Dr. Voss glanced at the environmental control panel, her brow furrowing with concern. "The resonator's energy surge is affecting our systems," she announced, her fingers flying over the controls. "Lyra, stabilize the life support. We need to maintain optimal conditions for the delivery." As the medical team worked to regulate the environment, Thomas remained steadfast at Petra's side. Her scales shifted through a kaleidoscope of colors, reflecting the intensity of her labor. The air around them seemed to crackle with an invisible energy, causing nearby monitors to emit intermittent static. Hours passed, marked by the rhythmic pulsing of the harmonic resonator. Its hum grew louder, synchronizing with Petra's contractions. The assembled team of human, Talaxian, and Novan experts watched in awe as the unprecedented birth unfolded before them. In the command center, a priority communication from Admiral Stern appeared on the main screen. His face was grim as he addressed the security team. "We have a situation on Earth and Talaxis," he reported. "Extremist groups have launched coordinated attacks on key Alliance facilities. I'm mobilizing a joint task force to counter the threat. Maintain vigilance on Haven." Before anyone could respond, the entire outpost was plunged into darkness. The harmonic resonator had emitted a massive energy pulse, overloading the power grid. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing the medical bay in an eerie red glow. In that moment of darkness and uncertainty, a new cry pierced the air. Petra's labor had reached its climax, and their child had entered the world. Dr. Voss's voice rang out, filled with wonder and professional calm. "It's a girl, and she's extraordinary." As the backup generators hummed to life, restoring power to the outpost, Thomas and Petra got their first glimpse of their daughter. She was a perfect blend of both species, delicate human features framed by softly iridescent Talaxian scales. Her eyes, when they opened, revealed multifaceted irises that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. "Lyra," Petra whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "We'll call her Lyra." As the medical team performed their initial checks on the newborn, Dr. Voss's attention was drawn to the readings from the harmonic resonator. The device had undergone a startling transformation, now emitting a continuous, low-level energy field that permeated the entire facility. Outside the medical bay, the effects of this change were becoming apparent. The lush vegetation surrounding the outpost was growing at an accelerated rate, new species emerging that combined traits from both Earth and Talaxian flora. Within days, news of Lyra's birth had spread across Earth and Talaxis, eliciting a mix of celebration and concern. The United Earth Council convened an emergency session to discuss the implications of this milestone in interspecies relations. On Haven, the research team worked tirelessly to document the rapid changes occurring in the local ecosystem. Animals displayed increased intelligence, forming new social structures that cross species boundaries. The planet itself seemed more stable, with geological surveys confirming the complete cessation of seismic activity. A week after Lyra's birth, Thomas and Petra watched in amazement as their daughter achieved developmental milestones far beyond her age. She had already begun to babble, her eyes tracking movement with uncanny precision. Dr. Voss reviewed the latest data on Lyra's growth. Her development is accelerated beyond anything we've seen in either human or Talaxian infants. At this rate, she could reach early childhood stages within months. As Thomas cradled Lyra in his arms, he felt a surge of emotion that wasn't entirely his own. The bond between him and Petra had deepened, their telepathic connection now crystal clear. To his surprise, he sensed a faint tendril of thought from Lyra as well, a wordless communication of contentment and curiosity. The arrival of the Novan delegation marked another turning point. Their shimmering energy-based forms moved through the outpost, observing and analyzing the changes wrought by the harmonic resonator and Lyra's birth. One of the Novan approached Thomas and Petra, its voice resonating directly in their minds. Your child represents a new chapter in the evolution of your species. We are honored to witness this moment. As the Novan studied the transformed harmonic resonator, Admiral Stern's holographic image appeared in the command center. The immediate threat from the extremist groups has been neutralized, he reported. But we need to consider long-term security measures for Haven. I'm proposing the establishment of a joint human-Talaxian defense force. The Admiral's words were cut short by the announcement of an incoming ship. A high-ranking delegation from Earth and Talaxis was on final approach, including members of both the United Earth Council and the Talaxian High Council. As the ship descended through Haven's atmosphere, now noticeably richer in oxygen, Thomas and Petra stood at the outpost entrance. Lyra, already showing signs of extraordinary awareness, reached out towards the sky with a tiny, scaled hand. The future of their alliance, their planet, and perhaps their entire civilization hung in the balance. As the delegation disembarked, Thomas felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders once more. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that the path forward would be shaped by the miracle of new life in his arms and the unprecedented changes unfolding around them. As the delegation's ship touched down on the landing pad, Thomas felt Lyra stir in his arms, her tiny hand reaching out towards the sky once more. The ship's hatch opened with a hiss, revealing the imposing figures of United Earth Council President Marcus Blackwell and Talaxian High Counselor Zara. They stepped onto Haven soil, their eyes widening as they took in the lush, transformed landscape surrounding the outpost. "Welcome to Haven," Thomas said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "We're honored by your presence." President Blackwell nodded, his gaze fixed on Lyra. "So, this is the child we've heard so much about." High Counselor Zara moved closer, her multifaceted eyes shimmering with curiosity. "May I?" Petra nodded, and Zara gently touched Lyra's cheek. The child gurgled, her eyes tracking the Talaxian's movement with uncanny precision. "Extraordinary," Zara breathed. Dr. Voss stepped forward, tablet in hand. "If you'll follow me, we've prepared a comprehensive tour of the facility and our latest findings." As they moved through the outpost, the delegation marveled at the rapid changes in Haven's ecosystem. New hybrid plants lined the walkways, their leaves a mesmerizing blend of Earth and Talaxian characteristics. In the distance, previously barren hills now teemed with vibrant vegetation. The harmonic resonator's influence has accelerated environmental adaptation beyond our wildest predictions, Dr. Voss explained, leading them to the device's housing. But that's not all. She activated a holographic display showing real-time data streams. We've discovered that the resonator's capabilities extend far beyond terraforming. It's now capable of facilitating instantaneous communication across vast distances and generating clean, sustainable energy. President Blackwell's eyebrows shot up. Are you saying we could potentially use this technology for interstellar communication? Dr. Voss nodded, and much more. The energy output alone could revolutionize our power grids back on Earth and Talaxis. As the tour continued, Thomas and Petra introduced Lyra to the delegation members. The child, now exhibiting the development of a 2-year-old, walked confidently between her parents, occasionally uttering words in a mix of English and Talaxian. Her growth rate is unprecedented, Petra explained, her scales shifting to a proud azure. Dr. Voss believes she may reach early adolescence within a year. The Novan representatives, their energy-based forms shimmering with interest, approached the group. One of them spoke directly into their minds. We have observed similar accelerated development in other hybrid species across the galaxy. With your permission, we would like to propose a joint research initiative to study the long-term effects of human-Talaxian hybridization. President Blackwell, his initial skepticism visibly fading, turned to High Counselor Zara. What do you think? This could be an opportunity to expand our alliance in ways we never imagined. Zara nodded, her eyes still fixed on Lyra. I agree. We could transform Haven into a full-fledged colony, invite more human-Talaxian couples to participate. Talaxis would be honored to provide additional resources and technology to support this endeavor. As discussions progressed, Admiral Stern's holographic form appeared, providing an update on the security situation. The immediate threats have been neutralized, but we can't let our guard down. I recommend establishing a permanent joint defense force here on Haven, combining our strengths with no offensive capabilities. The delegation moved to an observation deck overlooking a vast agricultural test site. Fields of new hybrid crops stretched to the horizon, their yields promising solutions to food scarcity issues on both Earth and Talaxis. Thomas stepped forward, his voice resolute. Petra and I would like to volunteer to lead the expansion efforts here on Haven. We propose creating an educational program to help future human-Talaxian couples navigate the unique challenges we've faced. President Blackwell nodded approvingly. Your experience would be invaluable. I think we're all in agreement that Haven represents a unique opportunity for both our peoples. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the transformed landscape, President Blackwell and High Counselor Zara stood side by side, ready to make history. By the power vested in me by the United Earth Council, Blackwell began. And with the full support of the Talaxian High Council, Zara continued, we hereby recognize Haven as an official joint human-Talaxian colony, they declared in unison. The assembled crowd erupted in cheers, the sound echoing across the planet's surface. As if in response, the harmonic resonator pulsed with increased energy, sending a wave of warmth through the gathering. Thomas and Petra embraced, Lyra held securely between them. They watched as construction drones began to assemble new structures on the horizon, the first steps in Haven's expansion. The future stretched out before them, full of promise and potential. In the command center, screens lit up with incoming transmissions. News of Haven's official status had spread, and applications from human-Talaxian couples were already flooding in. A new chapter in interspecies cooperation was beginning, with Haven at its heart. As the delegation prepared to depart, leaving behind a team of experts to assist with the colony's growth, Thomas and Petra stood at the edge of the landing pad. Lyra, her eyes shimmering with an inner light, reached out towards the stars once more. "Are you ready?" Thomas asked, squeezing Petra's hand. She nodded, her scales shifting to a determined blue. For whatever comes next. Together, they turned back towards the outpost, ready to welcome the first wave of new colonists and shape the future of Haven. The harmonic resonator hummed in the background, a constant reminder of the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment and the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. Ahead, the promise of a new future hung in the air, as tangible as the transformed atmosphere of Haven. As the delegation's ship departed, Thomas and Petra turned their attention to the task at hand. The first wave of human-Talaxian couples was due to arrive within days, and preparations were in full swing. The once quiet outpost buzzed with activity as construction drones and work crews labored around the clock. New residential units sprouted from the rich soil, their designs a harmonious blend of human and Talaxian architecture. Research facilities expanded, their gleaming facades reflecting the vibrant flora that now covered the landscape. On the day of the new colonists' arrival, Thomas and Petra stood at the newly constructed Welcome Center, Lyra perched on her father's hip. The child, now resembling a toddler despite being only weeks old, watched the incoming shuttles with rapt attention. As the first couple stepped onto Haven's soil, Thomas extended his hand in greeting. "Welcome to your new home," he said, his voice warm and steady. "I'm Thomas, and this is my wife Petra and our daughter Lyra." The newcomers, a human man and his Talaxian partner, gazed around in wonder. "It's more beautiful than we imagined," the woman said, her scales shimmering with excitement. Petra nodded, her own scales shifting to a welcoming blue. "You'll have time to explore, but first, we've prepared an orientation program to help you acclimate." Over the next few hours, Thomas and Petra guided the new arrivals through a comprehensive introduction to life on Haven. They explained the unique environmental conditions, the effects of the harmonic resonator, and the rapid changes they might experience. Dr. Alara Voss met each couple in the medical bay, her eyes sharp as she conducted initial examinations. "We'll be monitoring you closely," she explained, her fingers flying over a tablet as she recorded data. The combination of Haven's atmosphere and the resonator's influence may induce some physiological changes. As days turned into weeks, the colony hummed with growth and discovery. Thomas found himself overseeing the integration of the harmonic resonator into Haven's expanding infrastructure. He worked tirelessly with a team of engineers, using the device's energy to power advanced agricultural systems and create a planet-wide communication network. "The potential here is staggering," he told Petra one evening, his eyes alight with excitement. "We're not just building a colony, we're creating a whole new way of life." Petra, equally engrossed in her work, nodded in agreement. She had taken charge of establishing educational programs for the growing number of hybrid children. Using Lyra's accelerated development as a model, she designed curricula that could adapt to the unique needs of each child. "It's challenging," she admitted, her scales flickering with a mix of perseverance and fatigue. "But watching these children grow and learn at such an incredible pace, it's worth every moment." Lyra, now exhibiting the physical and cognitive abilities of a 5-year-old despite being only a month old, became the subject of intense study. Dr. Voss and her team conducted regular examinations, documenting her rapid growth and unique abilities. During one such session, Dr. Voss gasped as Lyra effortlessly communicated with both her human and Talaxian assistants without uttering a word. "Extraordinary," she murmured, making rapid notes. Her telepathic capabilities seemed to bridge the gap between our species. The arrival of the Novan delegation, led by their chief scientist Czar, marked another leap forward in Haven's research capabilities. The energy-based beings introduced advanced genetic modification techniques, opening new avenues for study. These methods could allow us to fine-tune human Talaxian hybrid genetics, Czar explained, his form shimmering with excitement. We may be able to mitigate health risks associated with interspecies breeding. A group of volunteer couples stepped forward for the first trials of this new process. Dr. Voss oversaw the procedures, her keen eyes missing nothing as she monitored the outcomes. The colony's rapid expansion drew the attention of Earth and Talaxis. Admiral Stern arrived with a team of military experts, immediately setting to work on establishing a joint defense force. "We can't afford to be complacent," he told Thomas as they surveyed the site for a new defense grid. "Haven represents the future of both our species. We need to protect it." Construction began on a state-of-the-art defense system, incorporating technologies from both worlds, enhanced by Novan advancements. Colonists underwent training, learning to work alongside the professional military personnel. As Haven's ecosystem continued to evolve under the harmonic resonator's influence, xenobiologists found themselves overwhelmed with new discoveries. Creatures that combined traits from Earth and Talaxian fauna appeared with startling frequency, adapting to the planet's unique environment. "Look at this," Dr. Voss said, pointing to a holographic display of a newly discovered species. "It has the body structure of an Earth deer, but with Talaxian chromatophores in its skin. It can change color at will, perfect camouflage in this evolving landscape." The success of Haven did not go unnoticed beyond Earth and Talaxis. A previously unknown civilization, the Krex, arrived in the system, requesting permission to observe the colony. Thomas and Admiral Stern led negotiations with the Krex representatives, establishing protocols for their limited involvement in Haven's research programs. The aliens' insectoid features and advanced biotechnology promised new perspectives on the work being done on Haven. As the colony grew, so did the challenges of management. Thomas and Petra found themselves at the center of a complex web of needs and expectations. They established a governing council, bringing together representatives from both human and Talaxian communities, as well as scientific advisors. "We need to ensure that every voice is heard," Petra said during the council's first meeting. "Haven's success depends on our ability to work together, to blend our strengths and overcome our differences." The announcement of a major scientific conference to be held on Haven sent waves of excitement through the colony. Researchers from Earth, Talaxis, and allied species would soon arrive to share in the groundbreaking discoveries made on this once barren world. As Thomas and Petra stood on the observation deck of the newly completed conference center, overlooking the thriving colony, they felt a sense of awe at what had been accomplished in such a short time. "We've come so far," Thomas murmured, squeezing Petra's hand. She nodded, her scales shimmering with pride and anticipation. "And we're just getting started." Below them, Lyra played with a group of hybrid children, their laughter rising on the warm breeze. The harmonic resonator hummed in the background, a constant reminder of the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment and the infinite possibilities that still lay ahead. The buzz of anticipation for the upcoming scientific conference permeated the colony, but beneath the excitement, a new tension began to simmer. As Thomas and Petra oversaw the final preparations for the event, the ground beneath their feet trembled. At first, the tremors were barely noticeable, a slight vibration that could be mistaken for the hum of construction machinery. But as days passed, the frequency and intensity of the shakes increased, sending ripples of concern through the colony. Thomas was in the middle of a meeting with the engineering team when a particularly strong quake struck. The room swayed, causing data pads to clatter to the floor and holograms to flicker. "Everyone stay calm," Thomas said, his voice steady as he gripped the edge of the table. "Let's get to the emergency shelter." As the tremors subsided, Thomas's communicator buzzed. It was Petra, her scales a worried orange. "Thomas, we need to assess the damage. The quake struck the residential area hard." Thomas nodded grimly. "I'm on my way." The scene in the residential sector was one of controlled chaos. Colonists milled about, checking on neighbors and assessing the damage to their homes. Cracks spider-webbed across the facades of several buildings, and broken glass littered the ground. Petra was already there, coordinating with emergency response teams. "We need to relocate the families from these damaged units," she said as Thomas approached. "The community center can serve as temporary housing." As they worked to secure the affected areas, Dr. Ilara Voss arrived, her face etched with concern. "Thomas, Petra, we need to talk," she said, gesturing for them to follow her to a quieter spot. Once they were away from the crowd, Dr. Voss activated a holographic display. "These quakes shouldn't be happening," she began, her fingers manipulating the image to show a cross-section of Haven's geology. "We stabilized the planet's core during the terraforming process. But look at this." The hologram zoomed in, revealing strange energy patterns pulsing through the deeper layers of the planet. The harmonic resonator's energy field has begun interacting with Haven's geological structure in ways we didn't anticipate, Dr. Voss explained. "It's causing these seismic disturbances." Thomas frowned, studying the data. "Can we modify the resonator to stop this?" Dr. Voss shook her head. "Not without potentially destabilizing the entire ecosystem we've created. We need more time to study the phenomenon." Towards the spaceport. Thomas watched it land, his mind racing. "We need to call an emergency meeting of the Colony Council," he said, "and prepare for a town hall. The colonists deserve to know what's happening." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Thomas led teams working around the clock to repair and reinforce damaged structures. New architectural designs were hastily implemented, incorporating flexible materials and shock-absorbing foundations. Petra found herself stretched thin, coordinating the relocation of affected colonists while also managing the influx of conference attendees. The community center and several research facilities were quickly converted into temporary accommodations. Despite their best efforts, whispers of discontent began to spread through the colony. During a packed town hall meeting, a human colonist named Marcus stood up, his face creased with worry. "How can we be sure we're safe here?" he asked, his voice carrying across the hushed room. "My partner and I came to Haven for a new start, not to live in constant fear of earthquakes." Thomas stepped forward, his demeanor calm but resolute. "I understand your concerns," he said, meeting Marcus's gaze. "Dr. Voss and her team are working tirelessly to understand and address these seismic events. In the meantime, we're implementing new safety measures and reinforcing our structures." Petra joined him, her scales a soothing blue. "Haven has faced challenges before, and we've overcome them together. This is no different. We're taking every precaution to ensure your safety." Despite their reassurances, a small group of colonists approached them after the meeting, requesting transport back to their home planets. Thomas and Petra exchanged a worried glance, knowing that each departure would strain the delicate balance they'd worked so hard to achieve. As they grappled with these internal challenges, external pressures mounted. Admiral Stern arrived at the colony's command center, his face grim. "We've detected increased activity in the outer system," he reported, pulling up a tactical display. "Several unidentified ships have been moving in and out of sensor range. They could be simple observers, but we can't rule out the possibility of opportunistic factions looking to exploit our current vulnerability." Thomas nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle more heavily on his shoulders. "What do you recommend?" "I'm increasing patrols and running drills with the Joint Defense Force," Stern replied. "We need to be prepared for any scenario, including a potential evacuation." As the adults wrestled with these mounting challenges, Lyra continued to astound those around her. Now displaying the physical and cognitive abilities of a 10-year-old, she had begun to take an active role in the colony's scientific projects. Dr. Voss watched in amazement as Lyra effortlessly bridged communication gaps between human and Talaxian researchers, her unique perspective offering insights that neither species had considered. Lyra, what do you make of these energy patterns? Dr. Voss asked, showing the young hybrid the geological scans. Lyra studied the hologram intently, her eyes shimmering with an inner light. It's like a song, she said slowly. But the notes are out of tune. Maybe if we could harmonize them. Before Dr. Voss could probe further, alarms blared throughout the colony. Another quake, stronger than before, shook the ground. As stabilizers kicked in and emergency protocols activated, a new ship appeared in Haven's orbit. Thomas and Petra rushed to the communication center, watching as the ship hailed the colony. The screen flickered to life, revealing the face of a woman in her mid-40s, her eyes sharp and intelligent. "This is Dr. Mira Robertson," she announced. "I hear you could use a geologist." "Geologist from Earth. I've been leading deep core drilling operations on several terraformed worlds. We picked up your distress signals and came as quickly as we could." Thomas and Petra exchanged glances, relief washing over them. "Dr. Robertson, your timing couldn't be better," Thomas said. "We're dealing with some unexpected geological instability." "I've reviewed the data you've transmitted," Dr. Robertson replied, her tone businesslike. "I'd like to land and join your conference. I believe I can offer some insights into what's happening beneath Haven's surface." Within hours, Dr. Robertson's team had set up their equipment in one of the colony's research labs. As the scientific conference began, Thomas and Petra found themselves juggling their roles as hosts with the pressing need to address Haven's geological crisis. The conference hall buzzed with activity as researchers from various species shared their findings. Dr. Voss presented her latest work on human Talaxian genetic compatibility, drawing excited murmurs from the crowd. However, an undercurrent of tension ran through the proceedings as another tremor shook the building, causing the lights to flicker briefly. Thomas stepped up to the podium, his face a mask of calm determination. "Esteemed colleagues, as you've no doubt noticed, Haven is experiencing some unexpected seismic activity. We've brought in additional expertise to help us understand and address this issue. I'd like to introduce Dr. Mira Robertson, who will present her findings from our deep core analysis." Dr. Robertson took the stage, activating a holographic display of Haven's interior. "What we're seeing here is unprecedented," she began, her voice carrying across the now silent auditorium. "The harmonic resonator's energy field has created pockets of highly compressed energy within Haven's mantle. These pockets are the source of the seismic activity you've been experiencing." A ripple of concern spread through the audience. Dr. Robertson continued, zooming in on one of the energy pockets. "The good news is that we believe we can address this issue. The bad news is that if left unchecked, these pockets pose a significant threat to the colony's long-term stability." Thomas stepped forward, his mind racing with the implications of Dr. Robertson's findings. "We've developed a plan to modify the harmonic resonator," he announced. "Working with Dr. Robertson, Dr. Voss, and our Novan scientists, we believe we can recalibrate the device's energy output to disperse these energy pockets gradually." As Thomas outlined the modification plan, Petra noticed a commotion at the back of the hall. The Krex observers were huddled together, their insectoid features twitching with agitation. She made her way towards them, sensing that something was amiss. Before she could reach them, the lead Krex representative stepped forward, mandibles clicking. "We must interject," it announced, its translator rendering the clicks into stilted English. "The modification of the harmonic resonator poses a risk to the atmospheric regulation technology we have integrated into your systems." Thomas paused, caught off guard by the interruption. "We've taken all precautions to ensure the compatibility of our systems," he said, trying to keep his voice level. The Krex representative's compound eyes gleamed. "Perhaps, but we must inform you that our continued support comes at a price. Our species has long sought a planet with Haven's unique properties. We demand a significant portion of Haven's territory in exchange for our continued technological assistance. A shocked murmur ran through the crowd. Admiral Stern, who had been standing quietly at the back of the hall, stepped forward, his hand moving to his communicator. "And if we refuse?" he asked, his voice hard. The Krex's antennae twitched. "Then we will be forced to withdraw our support. Your atmosphere may become unstable." As tension filled the room, Lyra pushed away to the front, her eyes gleaming with an inner light. "Wait," she said, her voice carrying a strength that belied her youthful appearance. "I have an idea." Thomas and Petra turned to their daughter, surprised by her sudden interjection. Lyra stood tall, her hybrid features a striking blend of human and Talaxian characteristics. "I can communicate with them," she said. "Directly, with my mind." Dr. Voss stepped forward, her eyes wide with realization. "The genetic adaptations we've been studying." Lyra's telepathic abilities have developed far beyond what we anticipated. Thomas hesitated, looking from Lyra to the Krex representatives. "It's too dangerous," he began, but Petra laid a hand on his arm. "We need to try," she said softly. "For Haven." Admiral Stern nodded, already mobilizing his security team. "We'll set up a controlled environment. If there's any sign of danger, we pull her out immediately." As preparations were made, Dr. Robertson pulled Thomas aside. "There's something else you need to know," she said, her voice low. "Those energy pockets in the mantle? They contain exotic matter with properties similar to advanced propulsion systems. It could revolutionize interstellar travel, but it's highly unstable. If we don't act soon, it could tear Haven apart." Thomas's mind raced with the implications. He looked across the room, where Lyra was being briefed by a team of human and Talaxian diplomats. His daughter caught his eye and smiled reassuringly. As Lyra prepared to make contact with the Krex leaders, Thomas and Petra stood hand in hand. Watching their daughter take on a challenge that could determine the fate of Haven and perhaps the future of interspecies relations, the weight of responsibility pressed down on them. But in that moment, they drew strength from each other and from the remarkable community they had built on this once barren world. The conference hall had transformed into a hub of frenetic activity. Scientists huddled over data terminals. Diplomats whispered urgently in corners, and through it all, the ever-present hum of the harmonic resonator served as a reminder of the delicate balance they fought to maintain. As Lyra closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, Thomas and Petra held their breath, knowing that the next few moments could change everything. Everything. The tension in the room was palpable as Lyra's eyes fluttered closed, her face a mask of concentration. For several long moments, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the Krex representatives began to twitch and click, their antennae waving in an intricate dance. Lyra's brow furrowed, and a bead of sweat rolled down her temple. "It's working," Dr. Voss whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. Suddenly, Lyra's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. "I understand them now," she said, her voice resonating with a strange harmony. "They're not just after territory. They're afraid." Thomas stepped forward, his curiosity piqued. "Afraid of what?" "Of being left behind," Lyra explained, turning to face the Krex. "They've seen how quickly we've advanced, and they fear becoming obsolete. But I've shown them that we're stronger together." The lead Krex representative chittered softly, its compound eyes fixed on Lyra. When it spoke, its words were translated with a new depth of emotion. "We apologize for our aggressive approach. The young one has shown us a vision of cooperation that we had not considered." Petra let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Then you'll work with us to modify the harmonic resonator?" The Krex bobbed its head in what seemed to be a nod. "We will share our knowledge and assist in the modifications. In return, we ask for equal partnership in Haven's future endeavors." Thomas and Petra exchanged a look of relief and excitement. "We accept," Thomas said, extending his hand to the CREX representative. As the conference hall erupted in applause, Dr. Robertson approached Thomas with a data pad. "We need to move quickly," she said, her voice low and urgent. "The energy pockets are becoming increasingly unstable." Thomas nodded, his mind already racing with plans. "Let's get to work." Over the next few days, Haven became a hive of activity. Thomas led a team of human, Talaxian, and CREX scientists in modifying the harmonic resonator. They worked around the clock, carefully adjusting the device's energy output to address the pockets of compressed energy within Haven's mantle. As they worked, Petra focused on diplomacy. She spent long hours in negotiations with Admiral Stern and representatives from various species, drafting a comprehensive agreement that would shape Haven's future. The final document outlined the terms of the CREX's involvement in Haven's research initiatives, provisions for shared access to exotic matter research, and a framework for collaborative efforts in atmospheric regulation. On the outskirts of the main colony, Dr. Robertson and her geological team established a secure research facility designed specifically for handling and analyzing the potentially volatile exotic matter. The facility hummed with activity as researchers from multiple species worked side by side, their differences forgotten in the pursuit of scientific discovery. Meanwhile, Lyra took on a new role in the colony. Under the guidance of Dr. Voss, she began training a small group of other hybrid children, teaching them to harness their developing telepathic abilities. The program aimed to create a core of specialized communicators to facilitate interactions between different species on Haven and beyond. As news of Haven's advancements spread across the galaxy, the colony experienced an influx of requests from various alien species seeking to participate in the research programs or establish diplomatic relations. Thomas and Petra, recognizing the need for a more structured approach to interstellar diplomacy, found themselves in lengthy discussions with the United Earth Council and Talaxian High Council. "We need to think bigger," Thomas said during one such meeting. "Haven could serve as a neutral ground for galactic cooperation." Petra nodded, her scales shimmering with excitement. "A galactic council, with Haven as its headquarters. It's ambitious, but I think it's necessary given our unique position." The proposal was met with enthusiasm, and soon plans were underway to expand Haven's infrastructure. Construction began on a massive interstellar spaceport, its design incorporating advanced technologies from multiple civilizations. The project became a symbol of galactic cooperation, with workers from dozens of species laboring side by side. As Haven's importance grew, so did the potential threats. Admiral Stern, ever vigilant, initiated the development of a planetary defense system. "We're combining human, Talaxian, and CREX technologies," he explained to Thomas and Petra as they reviewed the plans. "It'll create a formidable protective shield around the planet." Construction of orbital defense platforms began, with the first units becoming operational within weeks. The sight of the platforms taking shape in Haven's orbit was a stark reminder of the challenges that came with their growing influence. Despite the rapid changes, Thomas and Petra never lost sight of the colony's core needs. As Haven's population continued to grow, they faced the challenge of expanding the colony's agricultural capabilities. They implemented a series of terraforming projects, using modified versions of the harmonic resonator to accelerate plant growth and soil enrichment. "It's incredible," Petra marveled as they surveyed the newly created farmlands. Vast fields of crops stretched to the horizon, the plants swaying gently in the breeze. "Who would have thought that device would end up feeding our people?" Thomas smiled, squeezing her hand. "We've come a long way from that first meeting on the Novarian ship." As they stood there, watching the sun set over their thriving colony, a notification chimed on Thomas's communicator. "It's time," he said, his voice tinged with excitement and apprehension. They made their way to the newly completed spaceport, where a crowd had gathered to witness a historic moment. The sleek form of Haven's first interstellar exploration vessel gleamed under the floodlights. Christened Unity, the ship represented the culmination of years of cooperation and scientific advancement. As Thomas and Petra took their places on the viewing platform, they saw Lyra standing with the ship's crew, a diverse team of humans, Talaxians, and representatives from allied species. Their daughter, now looking like a young woman in her late teens, caught their eye and waved. "She's grown up so fast," Petra murmured, her voice thick with emotion. Thomas nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and nostalgia. "And now she's going to help us explore the galaxy." The countdown began, and a hush fell over the crowd. As Unity's engines roared to life, Thomas and Petra held each other close, their hearts swelling with hope for the future they had built together. The ship lifted off, its sleek form quickly becoming a distant point of light in the night sky. As the cheers of the crowd washed over them, Thomas and Petra shared a look of understanding. Their journey was nowhere near the end, but together, they were ready to face whatever challenges the universe might throw their way. As the cheers faded and the crowd began to disperse, Thomas and Petra exchanged a meaningful look. The launch of Unity marked a significant milestone, but they knew their work on Haven was nowhere near the end. "We should head back to the admin center," Thomas said, gently guiding Petra away from the viewing platform. "There's still so much to do." Petra nodded, her scales shimmering in the fading light. "You're right. The colony's growth isn't going to manage itself." Over the next few months, Haven underwent a period of rapid expansion. The influx of new residents from various species necessitated a major overhaul of the colony's infrastructure. Thomas found himself overseeing the construction of new housing complexes designed to accommodate the diverse needs of human Talaxian families and other alien species. "We need to think beyond traditional human or Talaxian architecture," Thomas explained to the construction team, gesturing to the holographic blueprints floating before them. "These homes need to be adaptable, with features that can be easily modified for different atmospheric requirements or gravity preferences." The new residential areas took shape quickly, their organic forms blending seamlessly with Haven's existing structures. Curved walls and adjustable living spaces became the norm, allowing residents to customize their homes to suit their unique physiologies. Recognizing the need for improved transportation as the colony expanded, Thomas initiated the development of an advanced public transit system. Maglev trains glided silently along elevated tracks, connecting the various districts of Haven. Hover shuttles zipped between buildings, their quiet hum a testament to the efficiency of the modified harmonic resonator technology that powered them. Thomas stood at the central transit hub, watching as a sleek maglev train pulled into the station. "Incredible," he murmured, observing the diverse mix of species disembarking. A year ago, this was just a concept on a drawing board. While Thomas focused on the physical infrastructure, Petra turned her attention to the social fabric of Haven. She established a network of community centers throughout the colony, designed to foster cultural integration and understanding among the various species. "Welcome to Haven's first intercultural exchange center," Petra announced, cutting the ribbon at the grand opening of the flagship facility. The building's interior was a marvel of adaptive architecture, with spaces that could be reconfigured to accommodate various cultural practices and physical needs. Inside, the center buzzed with activity. In one room, a Crex instructor clicked and chirped, teaching a group of humans and Talaxians the intricacies of their language. In another, a human chef demonstrated Earth cooking techniques to a fascinated audience of alien species. Petra smiled as she watched a group of children, human, Talaxian, and several hybrids, playing together in a specially designed playroom. "This is what Haven is all about," she said to Thomas, who had joined her for the opening. "Bringing different species together, learning from each other." As the colony grew, so did the complexity of its medical and scientific research. Dr. Alara Voss continued her groundbreaking work on human-Talaxian hybridization, focusing on the unique traits emerging in the second generation of hybrid children. In her lab, Dr. Voss examined a young hybrid girl who had recently recovered from a normally severe viral infection in a matter of days. The regenerative capabilities are astounding, she explained to Thomas and Petra during a briefing. And it's not just physical. These children are showing accelerated learning capabilities and improved adaptation to diverse environments. The implications of her findings sparked intense discussions among Haven's leadership. We could be witnessing the next step in human evolution, Thomas mused, his mind racing with the possibilities. While Haven flourished, Admiral Stern remained vigilant. Working closely with Krex engineers, he oversaw the completion of the planet's defense system. A network of orbital platforms and ground-based shield generators now encircled Haven, providing a formidable protective barrier. Initiating final system test, Stern announced from the control center. The room fell silent as technicians activated the defense grid. A shimmering energy field materialized in the sky above Haven, visible even from the ground. Defense system online and fully operational, a Krex engineer reported, its antennae twitching with satisfaction. Stern nodded, a rare smile crossing his face. Excellent work, everyone. Haven is now one of the most secure planets in the sector. The completion of the defense system coincided with a major breakthrough at the Exotic Matter Research Facility. Dr. Mira Robertson and her team successfully created a prototype propulsion system that harnessed the unique properties of the exotic matter. The potential applications are staggering, Dr. Robertson explained, her eyes alight with excitement as she presented the prototype to Thomas and Petra. This could revolutionize interstellar travel, allowing ships to cover vast distances in a fraction of the time currently possible. News of the breakthrough spread quickly, attracting attention from various alien species. Haven Spaceport saw an increase in diplomatic traffic as representatives arrived to discuss potential collaborations and technology sharing agreements. Amidst the flurry of scientific and diplomatic activity, Lyra had grown into a confident young woman. She now led Haven's newly established interspecies communication corps, a team of hybrid individuals with enhanced telepathic abilities. Remember, Lyra instructed her team before a crucial negotiation between two traditionally antagonistic species. Our role is to facilitate understanding, not to influence decisions. Use your abilities to clarify intentions and emotions, but always respect the autonomy of the parties involved. Her leadership proved invaluable as Haven prepared to host the inaugural session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from over 20 different species arrived, transforming the newly constructed council headquarters into a vibrant tapestry of diverse life forms. Thomas and Petra found themselves at the center of this historic gathering, working tirelessly to moderate discussions and establish protocols for interstellar cooperation. The Council's first major decision, the creation of a shared database of scientific knowledge with Haven as its central repository, was met with unanimous approval. As Haven's influence grew, however, so did opposition from conservative factions within both human and Talaxian societies. Reports reached the colony of a media campaign on Earth denouncing the hybridization program as a threat to human purity. Similar movements gained traction on Talaxis, leading to increased political tensions in both home systems. Thomas and Petra knew they had to act quickly to counter this negative propaganda. They initiated a series of live broadcasts from Haven, showcasing the colony's achievements and the benefits of interspecies cooperation. "This is Haven," Petra began, her image transmitted to billions of viewers across multiple worlds. "A place where differences are celebrated, where cooperation leads to innovation, and where we're building a future that belongs to all sentient beings." The broadcast featured interviews with hybrid children, tours of the advanced research facilities, and testimonials from various species about the positive impact of life on Haven. The transmissions helped to sway public opinion, garnering support for Haven's mission from across the galaxy. As Thomas and Petra reviewed the positive feedback from their outreach program, a urgent alert sounded from the communication center. Admiral Stern's voice came through, tense and focused. "We received a distress signal from Unity. They've encountered an unknown alien species with highly advanced technology. The new aliens are requesting contact with Haven, but their intentions are unclear. We need to prepare for a potential first contact situation." Thomas and Petra exchanged a look of both excitement and apprehension. This could be Haven's greatest challenge yet, and potentially its most significant opportunity. "Alert the Council," Thomas said, his mind already racing with preparations. "We need to assemble a first contact team immediately." As they hurried to the command center, the weight of the moment settled upon them. Whatever came next would shape not just Haven's future, but potentially the course of galactic history. The alert klaxon blared to the command center, snapping Thomas and Petra into action. "Incoming transmission from Unity," a technician announced, her fingers flying over the holographic interface. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the concerned face of Captain Elias Chun, Unity's commanding officer. "Haven Control, this is Unity. We've encountered an unknown alien species with technology far beyond anything we've seen. They're requesting contact with Haven leadership. Situation unclear, but potentially volatile." Thomas stepped forward, his expression grave. "Understood, Captain. Maintain your position and continue transmitting data. We're assembling a response team now." As the transmission ended, Thomas turned to Petra. "We need to convene the Galactic Council immediately. This could change everything." Within the hour, the council chamber hummed with tension as representatives from over 20 species gathered to assess the situation. Holographic displays showcased the data streaming in from Unity, revealing sleek, otherworldly vessels that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "The aliens call themselves the Zephyrians," Thomas explained, gesturing to the images. "Their ships possess capabilities we've never encountered before. We need to decide on our course of action." Discussions erupted among the council members, their voices a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and multi-tonal speech. Petra raised her hand, silencing the chamber. "We must approach this with caution, but also openness," she said, her scales shimmering in the low light. "I propose we send a response team to Unity's location while preparing Haven for potential first contact." The council voted unanimously in favor of Petra's proposal. As the meeting adjourned, Thomas pulled Admiral Stern aside. "Assemble our most advanced fleet," he instructed. "Equip them with the new exotic matter propulsion systems. We need to show strength but not aggression." Stern nodded, his cybernetic eye whirring as he processed the order. "I'll have the fleet ready to launch within 6 hours." While Stern prepared the response team, Petra hurried to the medical center to meet with Dr. Ilara Voss. The hybrid specialist was already hard at work, coordinating with her team to prepare for any eventuality. "We're retrofitting several quarantine areas with adaptive environmental controls," Dr. Voss explained, leading Petra through the bustling facility. "We'll be able to simulate a wide range of atmospheric conditions, just in case." Petra nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, Doctor. We need to be ready for anything." In another part of the colony, Lyra gathered her interspecies communication corps for an emergency training session. The young hybrids sat in a circle, their hands resting on a central harmonic resonator. "Focus your minds," Lyra instructed, her voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. "We need to expand our telepathic range. The Zephyrians may communicate in ways we've never encountered before." As the core members closed their eyes, the harmonic resonator began to pulse with energy. Lyra felt their combined mental presence expand, reaching further into space than ever before. Meanwhile, Thomas oversaw the activation of Haven's full defensive capabilities. The planetary shield shimmered into existence, a translucent dome covering the entire colony. In orbit, Additional defense satellites took position, their sensors scanning for any sign of approaching vessels. Planetary Defense Grid at full power, reported a Crex technician, its antennae twitching with satisfaction. Early warning network online and fully operational. Thomas allowed himself a small smile. Well done. Let's hope we won't need to use it. In the research district, Dr. Mira Robertson and her team worked feverishly to adapt their exotic matter findings for defensive purposes. The lab hummed with activity as scientists from multiple species collaborated on the urgent project. "We've done it!" Dr. Robertson exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. A prototype shield generator using exotic matter properties. If it works as projected, it could provide unprecedented protection against advanced weaponry. As the colony prepared for the unknown, Admiral Stern's fleet launched from Haven's orbital shipyards. The sleek vessels, their hulls gleaming in the starlight, engaged their exotic matter drives and vanished into the depths of space. Hours passed in tense anticipation. Then, without warning, alarms blared throughout the colony. A massive energy surge had been detected in orbit, far too soon for it to be Stern's fleet returning. "Zephyrian's ship detected," shouted a sensor operator. It's already here." Thomas watched in awe as a colossal vessel materialized in Haven's orbit, its iridescent hull seeming to bend the very fabric of space around it. The automated defense system sprang to life, targeting the unknown ship. "Stand down," Thomas ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos of the command center. "Deactivate weapons, but maintain shields. We can't risk a misunderstanding." He turned to Petra, his expression a mix of apprehension and tenacity. "It's time. Contact Lyra and her team. Let's see if we can talk to our new visitors." In the Interspecies Communication Center, Lyra received the urgent message. She gathered her team around the amplified harmonic resonator, its crystalline structure pulsing with energy. "Remember your training," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "Open your minds, but maintain your mental barriers. We don't know what we're dealing with." As one, the hybrid team reached out with their enhanced telepathic abilities. For a moment, there was nothing but the vast emptiness of space. Then, suddenly, a presence, alien, yet unmistakably sentient. Lyra gasped as the first telepathic messages from the Zephyrians flooded her mind. Images, emotions, and concepts beyond human understanding cascaded through her consciousness. She struggled to make sense of it all, to find a common ground for communication. There, peaceful, Lyra managed to convey to Thomas and Petra through their secure channel. Highly advanced, they're fascinated by Haven, by our diversity. They want to meet us, to exchange knowledge. Thomas and Petra shared a look of relief, tinged with cautious optimism. After a brief consultation with the hastily reassembled Galactic Council, they made their decision. "Transmit our acceptance," Thomas instructed. "Prepare the secure landing zone near the main research facility. And Lyra, tell them we're looking forward to meeting them." As the Zephyrian ship began its descent through Haven's atmosphere, the colony's inhabitants gathered to witness the historic moment. Thomas, Petra, and Lyra stood at the forefront of the welcoming committee, their hearts racing with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The massive vessel touched down with impossible grace, its iridescent hull shimmering in the light of Haven's twin suns. A hush fell over the crowd as a sleek, seamless hatch began to open. Thomas took a deep breath, squeezing Petra's hand. Whatever emerged from that ship would change the course of galactic history. As the first glimpse of the Zephyrians came into view, he steeled himself for the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. The future of Haven, and perhaps the entire galaxy, would be shaped by what happened in the next few moments. Thomas held his breath as the hatch fully opened, revealing the beings that would shape Haven's future. Emerging from the ship were tall, slender figures with iridescent skin that seemed to shimmer and change color with each movement. Their large, almond-shaped eyes swept across the gathered crowd, taking in every detail of their surroundings. At the forefront of the group stood a Zephyrian who carried an air of authority, clearly their leader. Thomas stepped forward, Petra and Lyra flanking him on either side. He extended his hand in a universal gesture of welcome, mirroring the movement of the Zephyrian leader. "I am Thomas Chun, Director of Haven Colony," he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "On behalf of our citizens and the Galactic Council, we welcome you to our world." The Zephyrian leader's hand-like appendage met Thomas's in a gentle grasp. When it spoke, its voice was melodious and multi-toned, unlike anything Thomas had ever heard. "Greetings, Director Chen. I am Ambassador Zara of the Zephyrian Conclave. We come in peace and with great interest in your remarkable achievement here on Haven." Lyra's eyes widened as she processed the telepathic undercurrents of Zara's words. The complexity and depth of the Zephyrian's thoughts were astounding, yet there was an unmistakable sense of benevolence. "They're sincere," Lyra whispered to Thomas and Petra. "Their intentions are peaceful." With introductions made, Thomas guided the Zephyrian delegation towards a specially prepared conference room near the landing zone. As they walked, the visitors' gazes darted from one sight to another, taking in the diverse array of species that called Haven home. Once seated in the conference room, discussions began in earnest. Thomas and Petra took turns explaining Haven's history, its mission of interspecies cooperation, and the challenges they'd overcome. "Ambassador," Zara listened intently, occasionally asking probing questions that revealed a deep understanding of galactic politics and sociology. "Your achievement here is truly remarkable," Zara said, its skin rippling with hues of blue and green. "We have observed Earth and Talaxis for centuries, waiting for a sign that your species were ready for advanced interstellar relations. Haven represents that sign." Thomas leaned forward, intrigued. "You've been watching us? For how long?" Zara's eyes shimmered. "Since before your people first looked to the stars with wonder. We have witnessed your triumphs and your struggles. The successful integration of humans and Talaxians here on Haven convinced us that the time for contact had finally arrived." As the conversation progressed, Zara made an offer that left Thomas momentarily speechless. "As a gesture of our goodwill and desire for cooperation, we would like to share some of our technology with Haven." With a fluid motion, Zara produced a small device that projected a holographic schematic into the air between them. "This is a design for an energy generation system that harnesses the power of subspace fluctuations. We believe it could be of great benefit to your colony and your ongoing research." Thomas's mind raced with the possibilities. He immediately thought of Dr. Mira Robertson and her team, knowing they would be eager to study this revolutionary technology. "Thank you, Ambassador. This is incredibly generous. I'll assemble our top scientists to begin studying these designs immediately." As the meeting continued, Dr. Alara Voss entered the room, having been summoned to conduct preliminary medical scans of the Zephyrian visitors. With their consent, she began her examination, her eyes widening as she analyzed the results. "Fascinating," she murmured, reviewing the data on her handheld device. "Your biology is remarkably adaptable. You appear capable of surviving in a wide range of environments that would be hostile to most species we've encountered." This revelation sparked a new thread of discussion about potential genetic exchange programs between Zephyrians and Haven's human-Talaxian hybrids. The possibilities for advancing medical science and improving quality of life for all species were tantalizing. As the day progressed, Thomas organized a tour of Haven's key facilities for the Zephyrian delegation. They visited the modified harmonic resonator, the advanced medical research labs, and the newly constructed Galactic Council chambers. At each stop, the visitors offered insights and suggestions based on their own experiences with interstellar governance and advanced technology. The tour culminated in a public event at the colony's Central Plaza. Haven's citizens gathered, a mix of excitement and apprehension visible on their faces as they observed the Zephyrians from a safe distance. Thomas and Petra stood with Ambassador Zara, answering questions and helping to ease any tensions among the colonists. As the event wound down, Lyra approached Thomas with an urgent message. "Director, the Unity exploration vessel has sent a communication. They've encountered another alien species in a nearby star system, but they're describing the situation as potentially hostile." Thomas's brow furrowed as he processed this new information. He glanced at the Zephyrian delegation, then back at Lyra. "Thank you, Lyra. We'll need to address this immediately. But first, let's conclude our meetings with the Zephyrians. We may need their insights more than ever now." As the sun began to set on this historic day, Thomas couldn't help but feel a mix of hope and apprehension. The arrival of the Zephyrians had opened up incredible new possibilities for Haven and for interstellar cooperation. But the news from Unity served as a stark reminder that the galaxy was vast and full of unknowns. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Thomas knew that Haven would face them with newfound strength and allies. And resilience. As Thomas pondered the implications of the Zephyrians' arrival and the potential for unprecedented galactic cooperation, Lyra's urgent message shattered the moment of optimism. "Director, we need to address the situation immediately," Lyra pressed, her voice low but insistent. Thomas nodded, his expression turning grave. He turned to Ambassador Zara, who had been observing the exchange with keen interest. "Ambassador, I apologize, but an urgent matter has arisen. Would you be willing to join us in an emergency meeting?" Zara's skin rippled with shades of deep blue, reflecting a sense of concern. "Of course, Director Chen. We are here as allies and are prepared to assist in any way we can." Within minutes, Thomas had assembled a core group in Haven's Secure Command Center. Petra, Lyra, Ambassador Zara, and key members of Haven's defense team gathered around a holographic display showing the last known coordinates of the Unity exploration vessel. Admiral Stern's holographic image flickered to life above the table. "Director, we've received additional data from Unity. They've encountered a large fleet of unknown vessels in the Theta Cygni system. Initial attempts at communication have been met with aggression." Thomas leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "What's Unity's status?" "They've managed to evade direct conflict so far, but they're outnumbered and outgunned. They need immediate assistance," Stern replied, his voice tense. Ambassador Zara stepped forward, its iridescent skin pulsing with willpower. "Director Chun, if I may, the Zephyrian Conclave is prepared to offer our support. We have a battlecruiser in orbit, equipped with our most advanced cloaking and weapons technology. It could reach the Theta Cygni system well ahead of your conventional fleet." Thomas exchanged a look with Petra, a mix of relief and apprehension passing between them. "Ambassador, we're grateful for your offer. Admiral Stern, how quickly can you assemble a response fleet?" "We can have a task force ready to launch within the hour, sir," Stern responded. As the group began discussing strategy, Lyra stepped forward, her eyes bright with willpower. "Father, Mother, I have a proposal." Thomas and Petra turned to their daughter, sensing the weight of her words. "I can lead a team of our enhanced human-Talaxian hybrids on a covert operation aboard the Zephyrian vessel," Lyra said, her voice steady. "Our telepathic abilities, combined with Zephyrian technology, could provide invaluable intelligence and potentially defuse the situation without resorting to full-scale conflict." Thomas felt a surge of pride mixed with parental concern. He glanced at Petra, seeing his own conflicted emotions mirrored in her eyes. After a moment of silent communication, they both nodded. "Very well, Lyra," Thomas said, his voice tight with emotion. "Assemble your team, but promise me you'll exercise extreme caution." Lyra nodded, her expression a mix of excitement and commitment. "I will, Father. We won't let you down." As the meeting adjourned and preparations began in earnest, Thomas pulled Petra aside. "Are we doing the right thing?" he whispered, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. Petra placed a hand on his arm, her touch reassuring. "We've raised her to be strong and capable. This is her chance to prove it, not just to us, but to herself and all of Haven." Thomas nodded, drawing strength from Petra's unwavering support. He watched as Lyra coordinated with her team and the Zephyrian technicians, her confidence and leadership evident in every gesture. Within hours, the joint fleet was ready to depart. The Zephyrian battlecruiser, with Lyra and her team aboard, shimmered into invisibility as it engaged its cloaking technology. Admiral Stern's task force, a formidable array of Haven's most advanced warships, assembled in orbit. As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Thomas addressed the gathered forces via holographic transmission. "You carry with you the hopes and dreams of Haven and our newfound allies. Remember our mission: to protect, to understand, and to forge new bonds of friendship across the stars. Go with courage, return with honor." With a brilliant flash of energy, the fleet vanished into the depths of space, leaving Thomas and Petra to wait and hope for their safe return. As the last echoes of the hyperspace jump faded, Thomas turned to Petra, drawing her close. "Now," he said softly, "we prepare Haven for whatever comes next." Together, they made their way back to the colony's command center, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. The future of Haven, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance as their daughter and their allies raced towards an uncertain confrontation in the distant Theta Cygni system.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.